And we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if I can have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Bergman.
Present.
Commissioner Marsters.
Present.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen.
Present.
Vice Chair Gutierrez.
Present.
Chair Silberman.
Present. So before we begin, and I imagine I'm not going to be the only one making this disclosure, I did meet with the developer. I can't remember when. It was sometime, I want to say like a month or so ago, we met to talk about the project.
I did as well.
So did I.
As did I.
I met with him on March 4th from 4 to 5 p.m.
Well. Don't make me pull out my phone.
I'd also observed that, and I see we have one letter on the dais from Lester G. Girdlestone, dated April 14, 2015. That'll be considered part of the record. I received, I want to say, 3 or 4 emails today and yesterday, and I don't see those up here, and I don't know whether they just came to me. They were from citizens who were concerned about the size of the project, and frankly, I probably could look up the names. I assumed that they'd be up here, but in any event, I received those emails. So with that, I'm assuming we have a presentation of some kind, and I will begin by, strike that, sorry, we have public comment. So first, before we get started, we have a period of public comment. This period of public comment is limited to items that are not on the agenda. So if you're here to discuss Wheeler Plaza, you can leave that discussion into the item. You'll have an opportunity to provide comment at that point. This is for items not on the agenda. We can briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on an item other than Wheeler Plaza? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to the public hearing. I'm going to read a long and involved statement. Bear with me. This is the procedure for a public hearing. Staff will present a report excuse me, on the history, physical features, etc. on the application, followed with the staff's recommendations. The applicant will then have an opportunity to make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The Commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. We ask that speakers fill out a speaker's form. I have 3 so far. It makes it easier for us to take the record down if you do that. They can be found by the door, and if you would hand them to Ms. Porras, she'll hand them up to me, and I will call your name in the order that I receive them. The speaker should come up to the microphone to speak. Since the meeting is being recorded, this will also assist staff in preparing the minutes. And actually, I should note the emails I received also indicated that there was that the emailers believed that there was insufficient notice to the public of today's meeting, and they asked that it be put over to another day. So with that, I'm going to ask for a presentation from staff.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Tonight, we're going to go through a presentation. Let me see if I can get this thing to work first. There we go. In terms of the project, we all know it's a significant project, so I think it's important to go back a ways and talk about the story and the background of Wheeler Plaza and where it's been and how we got to where we are today. Then we'll have Jessica Music, the architect, talk about the architectural design. We'll have John McMorrow, the developer, Silverstone Communities, talk about the construction plan. And then Lisa Coster Sanders, our principal planner, will talk about the entitlements that are before you this evening. In terms of the history, there's a long history to the Wheeler Plaza project. The history on the screen there starts at the year 2000, but actually it started a little bit before that. In 1999, the city did a parking study, and there was a citizens advisory committee that was made up of a broad range of citizens throughout the community, and they looked at downtown parking at that time. And one of their recommendations to the city council at that time was to look at a mixed-use development project on the Wheeler Plaza site. So that was back in 1999. And the city council at the time thought it was a good idea in that it should be explored. So at that time, the city, just shortly thereafter, the city began acquiring properties to assemble a project site that would make sense. And then Wheeler Plaza began to be mentioned in different documents, different city documents. You'll see downtown design guidelines, the economic development plan. It became one of the top 5 economic development objectives for the city at that time. In about 2008, 2009, the city council directed staff to go out and do a broad search for a developer to partner with the city, as the city's not a developer itself, to be a partner with the city in a mixed-use development project. And so there was a broad search was done, interviews were done, and Silverstone Communities was selected by the city council as the city's partner. The city then acquired more property in 2011. There were a number of community meetings early on. Right after the city selected the Silverstone Communities as the developer, there was a community meeting right up at the very beginning. And before pen was put to paper in terms of its design, we went to the community and said, well, if this community was going to consider a mixed-use project here, what would the community like to see? What are some of the benefits, the community amenities that a development would need to have to make it work in the city of San Carlos? More property was assembled, more community meetings. Then the city entered into a contract with deal terms, which were accepted by the city council in early 2011. An EIR was prepared, and another community meeting was held in 2011. And in April of 2012, the EIR was approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council. In 2015, we got our project submittal, and we just recently had a very well-attended community meeting. In fact, all the community meetings that we have been very well attended. I guess it was just back in February or so, we had standing room only up at the library, and they've all been really important in terms of how the project has been put together over time. These are some of the early images from 2011. These are just artistic sketches about, what the project might look like, and it shows some of the basic scale and mass and form. So you may have seen some of these sketches. There's been articles written about Wheeler Plaza. You may have seen it at a Rotary function. You may have seen it at a realtor's luncheon or some other presentation to the chamber that's been done around town. But these are sort of the images that circulated for a few years. What I'd like to do is talk about the context of Wheeler Plaza. I'm kind of starting big picture, and we're going to drill down a little bit. But in terms of the big picture, as you see over in the lower left-hand corner, you see Wheeler Plaza there, below it, Walnut Street, above it, right in the middle there, Laurel, El Camino Real, Caltrain Depot, right down the street, San Carlos Avenue. It's in a critical part of town, of course, in the heart of our downtown. But in terms of where it is in San Mateo County, in the region, in Silicon Valley, it's an incredibly unique location in a highly desirable place to be. For instance, you can walk to the Caltrain depot in just a couple of minutes. If you wanted to live downtown, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a car. You could catch Caltrain, Samtrans buses, shuttles. It's near the library. You could walk right over to the library or dine at some of the restaurants in the downtown and enjoy some of the other services and amenities that we have in our downtown. So it's a very unique and special location in our community. But why Wheeler Plaza in the first place? Why do cities support downtown mixed-use development in the first place? Over the last decade, we've seen that people's personal preferences have started to change in terms of their lifestyle interests and options. And as you know, downtown mixed-use developments contain a variety of uses. You might have retail on the ground floor, apartments or condos above, maybe some offices. So it's a mixed use. And typically they're in downtowns or transit-oriented environments. And what our research shows us is that the San Mateo County homebuyer, and in particular San Carlos's population profile and lifestyle interests have changed. And these developments attract residents that are looking for a more urban lifestyle, or those who are seeking a more affordable option than your typical and very expensive single-family residence. Now, I think it's important to note, very important to note, that we have a gem of a downtown, and it's very traditional in its design, in its form. And many view the downtown as the cultural and social heart of our community. And I don't think any of us should take change lightly in our downtown. On the other hand, I think Wheeler Plaza is seen as an opportunity to add vibrancy to our downtown and vitality and improve our local economy. And this can be viewed as a unique catalyst opportunity for the continuing success and resiliency of our downtown. So through this mixed-use development, there's potential to add new life and sustain our downtown over time. And I think most importantly, to make sure that it fits in with the character and the integrity of our downtown. And that's where, of course, the Planning Commission job comes in reviewing the project design and entitlements this evening. So moving on, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit more about Wheeler Plaza site area. As I noted, over time, what the city had done is assembled property. And the way we did it is, as you see, this is sort of a closer bird's eye view of the Wheeler Plaza site area. Walnut Street again below, San Carlos to the left, Laurel up at the top. The ones in red that you see there were proposed or were purchased with redevelopment agency dollars. The ones in yellow were with city housing asset dollars. So we used different pots of money to purchase these properties and assemble the properties over time. And it was very important the way it was configured because you had to have a rectangular lot to make this development economically feasible. Now, up at where you see the green area where it says New Laurel Plaza, one of the things that we heard in the very first community meeting is that the community wanted another downtown gathering space. And if a project like this was to go forward, that had to be a critical component of the project. And so part of the reason that the city purchased the Foodville site was to create a space for a new plaza area. And the plaza offers us a rare opportunity to create a new downtown gathering place, place for users of all kinds, employees, visitors, the lunch crowd, concerts. And its connection to Caltrain, of course, is right there. And the idea is also to take the building down at the beginning of construction so that there's a valet parking area there during the construction period. So it serves a number of different, very important purposes. Now, I'm going to tell a little bit more of the story because I think the story is very important to give you context. One of the other components of this is that the redevelopment agency was dissolved recently, just in the last few years. And when this happened, the state of California said to the city of San Carlos and the other 400 redevelopment agencies in the state that we had to sell those properties. We couldn't keep them anymore. Now, that would have killed this project because it wouldn't have been feasible anymore as a whole. So we talked back and forth with the state of California, and they were adamant that we had to sell the properties. However, what we were able to do is come to a compromise, and what they said is, if you are able to get all the taxing entities in the county to agree that Wheeler Plaza is a good idea, and you can get all their boards of directors to support the Wheeler Plaza project by resolution, then we'll let you have the properties. You don't have to sell them anymore. In this very unique circumstance. And frankly, I don't think they thought we could do it. So that's part of the story. I'll continue with that in a moment. Cherry Street BMR on the right, that's another idea that was part of this project. And we'll talk later about the BMR program. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions about it. But the idea that property there, sort of at the bottom of that red square on the right-hand corner of the slide there, is an apartment building owned by HIP Housing. And HIP Housing, we helped HIP Housing purchase that property. Our agency at the time, years ago, helped them. We talked to HIP Housing about partnering to do a below market rate project and maybe using some of the funds of this project to create a much more robust below market rate housing program. And so we'll talk more about that later and how that works. But that is a direct result of this project as well. So continuing on with that, story, entities in support of Wheeler Plaza. So we did go to all those entities. It took about 9 months. We had to stop everything. We went to all the boards of directors of all these groups, and we talked to them about Wheeler Plaza. And all of them passed resolutions in support of Wheeler Plaza. We sent all 16 resolutions to the state of California, and begrudgingly they allowed the city of San Carlos to keep the property. And the reason that they're supportive is because it makes sense from a long-term versus near-term benefit to them, right? I mean, at the time, we valued the properties at about $4.4 million. And versus, let's say, a $75 million project at the end of the day. So the return on their investment is much greater, let's say, over a 20-25 period of time. It's just like a mutual fund, right? I mean, it makes a lot more sense. So that's one of probably the biggest reason. But I think the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors also saw it as an economic development, a good economic development story in the county of San Mateo. But I think what most people care about here is, well, how does this benefit the city of San Carlos? What do we get out of this? So community benefits. Well, we would get a landmark building. And there were a number of things, as I noted, that came out in the very beginning of the project that we wanted and that we heard from the community. We knew the community wanted a plaza, a public plaza. New Class A retail space, market rate and affordable housing, multi-use alley, one of the things that we said to the developer at the very beginning of the project is they had to provide at least 187 parking spaces, which we have in Wheeler Plaza. And as you know, that's all free public parking. So they had to do that at least. And what we were able to find out is in the design of this project over time, we were able to get 252 parking spaces for an increase of about 65 public parking spaces. And part of this project would be that the parking garage, after the project is done, would then be given to the city. So the city would then own the parking garage. It would still be free parking for the community as part of this project. And that's how this project worked from an economic standpoint. New downtown residents will bring their disposable income to the local economy and to the local businesses, will create jobs, allow us to get grant funding. Elementary and high school development fees will go to our community. And then that in lieu fee contribution, $3.7 million. And we can talk more about the BMR, and I won't get into too much detail, but the idea then would be to take that money and put it into that Cherry Street affordable housing project, up to LEED Silver development standards in a transit-oriented development. In terms of the development program, we've assembled these 2.39 acres, 109 units, almost 10,000 square feet of Class A retail along San Carlos Avenue, a total of 447 parking spaces. The residential, as you'll hear from Jessica Music in a moment, is all below grade, and all the public parking is above grade. And again, that approximately 30 housing units of below market rate housing. And so what I'd like to do now, well, I'll talk about this really quickly. So this is the ground floor plan of the public parking garage, and this is a very important component of this. If the city's going to get this as part of an asset to the community, it has to make sense. So we worked very hard on trying to make the design of this work. And one of the other things that I talked about is that alley. The gray area that you see at the top of the screen is a service alley, and it would connect from Cherry Street over to San Carlos Avenue. So trucks would only be able to use that at certain times of the day. Let's say deliveries were in the morning. So what the community would be able to do then is potentially close this off at certain times of the day or for certain events. And so the idea would be, the vision for this is to create a space that could be a multi-use space along the alley. And so the design of the parking garage along the alley was carefully considered as well. And we can talk more about that and the different ideas that went into that. But this is a photo from some other project, but it has similar form and character in terms of what the vision is for that alley space that could be a multi-purpose area for the community. And so with this, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Music.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jessica Music. I'm with KTGY. We're the architects on the project. Some of the first couple slides that we're going to show might be a little bit of a review of some of the information Al just covered. And thank you, Al, for doing such a great job introducing the project and setting the tone for what we'll talk about next. So this is the project site. We're located at the corner of San Carlos and Walnut. This image shows the existing surface parking lot as well as the 3 city-owned buildings on the project site. This next slide shows our project site plan and some of the main components that Al has already touched on. So almost 10,000 square feet of retail space along San Carlos and wrapping the corner onto Walnut. And the parking garage structure that sits behind that retail space and fronts onto Walnut Street That garage structure is actually 3 levels. It's 1 level of subterranean parking and 2 levels above grade, and we'll show those plans a little bit later. There's 109 residential units in the project. They are located above the retail space and the parking garage, and the lobby and main residential entry for those units is located off of Walnut and is labeled lobby. So pedestrians accessing the retail space, there's actually two ways into that retail. The primary front door off of San Carlos, and we'll have large storefront and glazing. And then there's a secondary entry off of the arcade that actually runs between the retail space and the parking structure. And that arcade really is a pedestrian connection that connects Walnut all the way out to Laurel Street and passes by the future Laurel Street Plaza. Access to the residential lobby is taken off of Walnut, and also just to the left of that lobby is a small public plaza space that is located between the arcade and the lobby area, and we'll have some blow-up views of that a little later. There's multiple ways that the public and the pedestrians can circulate through the site, and this is perhaps one of the most exciting pieces of the project. We touched on the arcade that runs from Walnut all the way to Laurel, passing behind the retail and the public parking garage. There's also the Sister City Alley that allows that pedestrian arcade to actually connect onto San Carlos. And then there's multiple ways that the public and pedestrians can enter and exit the garage, with the main routes being from the parking garage to the arcade, kind of connecting out to Walnut or Laurel or San Carlos, and then a couple other entry points off of Walnut and also the alleyway. Cars entering the garage will take access off of Walnut. The residential entry point for the subterranean level is on the lower right-hand side of the parking garage on Walnut, and the public vehicular entry point is mid-block. So Al touched on this a bit, but our project is just inherently sustainable, and there's several sustainability goals that we're really trying to achieve. First of all, the project will be LEED Silver equivalent. And then just by nature of where our project sits in the downtown San Carlos area, residents and patrons using the parking garage will be able to walk and bike to transit. There's also, the project is located next to downtown retail and dining opportunities. The project is also providing bicycle parking for both the public garage and for residents. And there's also opportunities for electrical vehicle charging stations within the garage. Stormwater treatment. Actually, all of the water kind of from roof runoff and runoff from the podium plaza of the residential units will actually be cleaned and treated on site before being released into the stormwater system. And then there's just a long list of water and energy efficient techniques that the project will be using. Everything from low flow fixtures when we're considering water, using drought tolerant plants, using low flow irrigation systems. And then from an energy efficiency standpoint, basically the project is going to exceed Title 24 by 15%, and there'll be strategies employed within the residential units to help kind of monitor energy usage. We'll be using LED lights in the common areas and in retail fixtures, and just a whole list of techniques that we're using. This is the ground floor plan again. We wanted just to touch a little bit on the parking for the project. Basically 252 public parking spaces that will be located at the ground level and the second level above grade. And you can see kind of those two levels in the section on the upper right-hand side of the screen. You also see the height of that retail space. It is roughly 20 feet of height, which we think really sets that space up to be successful retail. And then touching again on just the short-term bicycle parking, 25 public spaces and then 19 residential spaces located adjacent to the residential lobby within the garage, and that area is highlighted in that salmon color. This is the second level of the garage parking. There's 137 spaces at this level. And this slide also shows how there is volume within the lobby space for the residential and the retail space. This is a plan view, the first level of the residential, located above the retail and the parking garage. And you can see its location in this section. There are 109 residential units in the project in a combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom plans. And an interesting part of this project is just the way that these residential units lay out. Along the bottom portion of the screen is actually Walnut Street, and you can see how the building massing actually breaks. And those courtyard spaces really come out to the building edge and help to break down the scale and the massing of the building along Walnut. We've paid particular attention about really trying to make sure there's some relief along the longest facade of the building, and making sure that this project feels open and inviting to pedestrians. This is actually the uppermost level of the residential units, and you can see in the section how, and also the plan, how the building massing actually steps back from San Carlos. It's roughly, that building step back is roughly 13 feet. When we thought it was important to be able to express some lower level roofs in that area. And there's also some key corners of the project where we are stepping back the massing. And you can see that around Courtyard 2 as well as along the alleyway. This view is actually taken from the corner of Walnut and San Carlos. We're really trying hard to show a strong retail base, and you can see that emphasized with the use of stone along San Carlos and then also wrapping along Walnut. The arches that you see down at the ground level actually provide a space for outdoor seating and dining opportunities, and that retail is actually pulled back in that area about 10 feet. So that we could provide those opportunities. This slide also shows the 3 levels of residential units located above the retail space and the garage. And you can see how the building mass steps back along San Carlos. And then there's a variety of balcony designs and window designs and configurations that we think just really add life and help animate the building facade. This is a view a little bit further down Walnut. This shows the entry to the residential lobby, and that's emphasized with the black canvas awnings and the stone base. Just to the left of the retail lobby, you get a glimpse of the public plaza space. And then also the arch just to the left of the plaza shows the beginning of the arcade that runs from Walnut out to Laurel Street. There's a pretty rich material palette for the project. We've talked about the stone base. There's lots of variations in the project's railings, the railings for the balconies and the open spaces. And you can see that with the wood balcony rails as well as the clay tile accents. We're also using a more traditional Spanish-style roof and introducing canvas awnings where we really want to emphasize lobby space and retail space. And this is just a blow-up view of the material board that we created as part of the city submittal, showing the clay tile that will be used at the roof, as well as the stone and the colors, the dark window frames, and the use of metal and the awning colors. This is another view of that plaza space along Walnut. You also catch a glimpse of the arcade that stretches from Walnut out to Laurel Street. And this is just another opportunity in a way that the project really opens itself up to the community, invites the community into these areas to either circulate through them, to gather, and just really tries to embrace San Carlos as a whole. So this view is actually taken if we were walking from Laurel Street looking down towards Walnut. So this is along kind of the alleyway edge of the building. And we paid particular attention to this side of the building, knowing that it's important, and it has an important connection. So the stone element and massing that you see actually sits above the arcade. And we really tried to dress up that arcade, and you can see decorative lights within that zone. We're using a rich material palette. There's decorative wall sconces. just really trying to emphasize the pedestrian connections through the building. This view also gives you a glimpse of the garage that's exposed along the alleyway, and just really trying to open up that garage, have it to be light and airy, and just treat it the way it should be treated. So this is a view standing along San Carlos, looking back towards Walnut. From this view, you get a glimpse of the Sister City Alley connection, as well as the alleyway connection that runs behind the parking garage and through our building. This view also shows and emphasizes the strong retail base again, showing the large amount of storefront glazing, trying to really give that retail some presence along San Carlos. And then with the signage opportunities and the use of canvas awnings, this view also shows how the building steps back again along San Carlos, and just the varying roof lines, the use of chimneys, some key corners where we're popping up the massing to add articulation. We're just very excited about all sides of this building and how it's coming together. And with that, I'll turn it over to John.
I'm John McMorrow with Silverstone Communities, and I'm going to talk about the timing of the construction and then during that construction period how the interim parking is going to work. First, I would like to thank staff for their amazing job in staying with this project, working extremely hard to get it to be a fantastic project for the city of San Carlos. About this time next year, the plan is for the Foodville building and for the retail site that's currently there where Hole in One Liquors is and all, for those buildings to be demolished and for the Foodville site to be paved over. Once that's paved over, that will become the location for the interim valet parking. And at the time that that's set up 100% ready to go for valet parking, that's when Wheeler Plaza, the current surface parking lot, will be taken down. And we wanted to make sure, we're really concerned that we have a parking program that works with the existing locations. It's very convenient so that during the construction period, the retail shoppers are not inconvenienced in any way possible. So we hired an outside consulting firm, Hexagon, to take a look at the parking there, how it's currently used, and how we can set up our valet program to work with that. So they actually sat out there for 3 days. They counted cars all day long. And as you can imagine, the peak time is at lunch when all 187 spaces at Wheeler Plaza are used. So they looked at how we can valet park those 87 spaces, and if you can, or do I do this? So the first location is the Foodville site itself. Once that's paved, that can accommodate 54 spaces. And that will be our primary valet location, but the program involves kiosks. It's very flexible. One thing that came out of the community meeting is that this location may result in too many cars on Laurel. If that's the case, it's very easy to have a second kiosk or even relocate this kiosk to San Carlos Avenue, right in front of the existing retail that's going to be torn down. So those parking spaces on San Carlos Avenue won't really be needed during the construction period, so we could use that for the valet parking as well. The 54 spaces will go there. The Samtrans garage is just up the street about a block. That can accommodate another 108 cars, 54 cars of which are at the top level, and the balance are in other levels that the valet park we believe will be able to accommodate. As that garage empties at the end of the day for any special events that occur, such as hot summer nights or evening events or weekend events, there's more capacity in that garage, and that garage will really become the primary location for cars to park. And then lastly, along El Camino Real, there's space for 104 cars to park. That's a couple of blocks away. And this is also where our construction parking will be. So the construction workers won't be parking in the neighborhoods. They'll be shuttled from this location to Wheeler Plaza. This actual site may adjust a bit depending on what's happening with the transit village at the time. And then, so if you look at the numbers, the demand that we're trying to accommodate is 187 spaces. There's 54 at Foodville, 108 at Samtrans, 140 adjacent to the railroad. So that's 302 spaces. So there's some excess capacity there as far as where we can park the cars. The other component that we've looked at is, once they've dropped off the cars, we want it to be convenient to pick up the cars. So we'll have programs in place that are state-of-the-art, texting. There are actually applications out there that people can use that say, hey, I'm going to be ready in five minutes. So the car's there. We're going to look also at having kiosks down Laurel if that's more convenient. But our goal here is to make sure that if anything, that this is an improvement over the existing parking as much as possible during construction. We think the construction for the garage is going to take about a year. At that point, it'll be ready for occupancy, and then cars will be able to park in the parking structure. So I'm available if there's any questions about the garage. Otherwise, after.
Good evening. I'm just going to walk you through the entitlements. You have quite a few in front of you this evening. The first item is the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, the zoning map amendment to rezone from MUDC to PD, design review certificate, the tentative map for the subdivision, grading and dirt hall, the below market rate housing plan, and the transportation demand management plan. And I'll walk through each of those for you. First, the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Plan. This is actually a recommendation that you'll be making to the City Council to adopt that plan. The Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Plan implements the mitigation measures that were identified in the final environmental impact report that was certified for this project. And some of those mitigation measures include, as you're familiar with, best management practices during the course of construction to deal with dust control, vehicle emissions, noise, vibration, stormwater measures, as well as hazardous materials. We do have some contaminated soil that we'll be needing to clean up, and there's also identified hazardous materials in several of the buildings that will need to be demolished. Another mitigation measure that was identified is to activate that traffic signal at Holly Street and Laurel Street and convert the Laurel Street and Cherry Street to a four-way stop control over the current two-way stop control. The next item that's also a recommendation is the Plan Development Permit, and that's a recommendation to the City Council to adopt the Plan Development Plan and the zoning map amendment to rezone the site Plan Development Zoning District. The site is currently zoned MUDC, that's our mixed-use downtown designation. And when we have these larger site developments, it's been the city's practice to look at a rezoning to PD, plan development, so we address the site-specific conditions that are appropriate for the project. This PD allows some minor variations from the MUDC regulations. It does have the 5 stories along Walnut Street. As you saw from the presentation, we have 4 stories along San Carlos Avenue, but because of the height of that parking structure level, it would be 5 stories along Walnut. Increase the ridge height to a maximum to 3 feet above the height limit that's identified in the zoning district, and reduce the parking setback. Again, this is something unique to this project since we have the public parking plaza. In most projects, you're not going to have that parking right up against the property line. You're going to have it set behind the building. But given that we have a public parking plaza here, we want it to be easily accessible, obviously, and maximize the number of spaces. There's a reduced parking setback that would be applicable to this project only with the zoning designation. Also have the commercial parking shared with the residential and eliminate the loading zone requirement for the commercial. The next item you have in front of you is the design review. And this is one item that you can take action on, and that would be to approve the design review certificate. As you see in that certificate, that really contains all of the conditions related to this project. As you saw from the presentation, this is a high-quality design with architectural details that reflect the Spanish mission style. The upper level of the building does have some step backs. There's a lot of details in the project. There's also ground level pedestrian scale with the use of quality finished materials. The next item is the tentative parcel map, another item that you could take final action on this evening. The tentative parcel map would merge the existing parcels to create two parcels. And for parcel 1, we would look at a 109-unit residential condominium, 5 commercial condominium units, and then the 1 city-owned parcel for the public parking plaza. There's also a public access easement that runs along the eastern portion of the property that would make up that full width of the alleyway, as well as a public access easement for that pedestrian pathway that was delineated from Walnut Street to Laurel Street. And then parcel 2 finally is the city-owned public access parcel that traverses from Cherry Street to San Carlos Avenue. The next item is the grading and dirt haul permit. In order to achieve the grading for the basement level and the foundations necessary, a grading and dirt haul certificate is presented before the Planning Commission. It's estimated at 28,000 cubic yards. And the dirt haul route has 2 different options that were assigned by the Public Works Director and the City Engineer. And one takes the route out to Highway 101, and the other is 280. And as you see in their certificate, they are prohibited from using the Holly Street. So in no situation would vehicles be using Holly Street unless it got prior approval for some unique situation from the Public Works Director. And then next item is the below market rate housing plan. Based on direction from City Council, and this was actually at several meetings, the affordable housing and the below market rate plan were discussed at City Council. The City Council provided direction to the developer to pay the below market rate fee rather than provide affordable units on site. We've estimated the fee at a little over $3.7 million. If you were to apply the standard code requirements to this project, that would be 16 affordable units, 11 of which would be available at moderate income and 5 at low income. And to put that into context for you, a 3-bedroom unit could be available then to a household earning $123,000. So that would be at the moderate income level. The council's interest in achieving the fee rather than the unit is to reach more affordable units than the 16 that would be provided on site and to get deeper levels of affordability. So as Al indicated, by leveraging those funds onto a possible Cherry Street affordable housing project, we can achieve more affordable units at lower income levels. And so as I indicated, they discussed that at several different meetings, provided direction to staff and the developer to pay the fee rather than provide them on site. And that most recent discussion was when the disposition and development agreement was revised and approved in 2013. And then the next item is the Transportation Demand Management Plan. You do have the plan in your packet. The project, just given its proximity, is a transit-oriented development project located in the heart of the city with close proximity to train, bus, downtown amenities. On-site specific measures include the bicycle storage, transit information that will be provided for the residents, high-speed internet, as well as unbundled parking. So the next steps, if you were to take action this evening, would be for the City Council's consideration of the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, as well as the plan development rezoning. Construction could begin in early 2016. The developer would implement the interim parking plan with the continued public access of the alleyway through the course of construction. And then the public parking structure could be open in early 2017, and then the project complete in sometime in 2019. So we would be able to get use of that public parking structure while they continue to work on the rest of the project. We have the recommendation for you is to recommend the City Council adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Also recommend the City Council adopt the zoning map amendment to rezone from MUDC to PD, as well as approve the plan of development, approve the design review certificate, tentative map, grading and dirt haul, below market rate housing plan, and the transportation demand management plan. And we have the formal motion is also in your packet, and I have that in 2 slides. Now we would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Does anyone want to ask questions now versus after public comment?
I mean, I could do it either way, though. My question might help public comment.
Well, I mean, it's up to you.
I guess at some point I would like someone to walk me through the changes from the EIR rendering and what we have in front of us. Whatever point would be best to do that, I am fine with, but that's what I'd like to see.
If you think it'll be helpful, we can do it now.
I think it just might be helpful for the public to understand it before they comment, but
Okay.
it's up to you.
That's fine.
It might be helpful to open up the architect's plan, and then, Al, maybe I could talk about some of the recent changes we did to the parking structure level, unless you want to walk through that.
And I guess because I'm looking at the draft DIR from 2011, and I'm looking at the current plan, and it seems that they're exceedingly similar. Did the depth of the basement change? Is that where the big change is? I'm just not quite understanding where I'm.
There's a different design.
Got it. Okay.
Theme, right? So there's that. But the massing, the unit count, the unit layout is all
this-
very,
very similar.
if not identical, as well as the
Right.
retail space. I think the biggest changes in response to some comments that we had at the last public meeting, at the community meeting, was that ground level garage plan. And so they were able to lower the ground level of the garage, so we don't have a grade differential from the backside of that parking level to that alleyway access. So previously, the plan had some stairs that needed to access.
Okay.
And as they were able to lower that level, so they're digging a little deeper, they were able to get a smoother transition in there. We also had a parking consultant take a look at it, Watchery Design, who's known as kind of the expert in that parking structure industry. And they also had some layout comments that were included in your packet that I think helped improve the internal circulation and flow as well, with the ramping and open up that center column. They were actually able to pick up some parking spaces in that basement level, the residential level. So you'll see a slight difference from your staff report to the plan you have of about 3 parking spaces they were able to gain in that level. And then I think that maybe the pulling back of the retail may have changed a little bit to get that open covered seating area is another change since the EIR was prepared. I think that's the main items.
Does anyone else have anything that they strongly believe will inform public comment?
No.
Okay, so I have, thank you. So I have 6 speaker slips. I'm hoping that if there's anyone else who intends to speak, if you could fill out a speaker slip, that would be super duper helpful. I'm going to assume that we only have 6 speakers otherwise. So we have, I'm going to set a clock for 3 minutes per speaker. And I would ask that, at least, yeah, if it works, all right, it does work. I'd ask that the speakers try and respect that time and finish up within 3 minutes if they can. And so I'm going to start with Janet, and I apologize, I don't know if it's Giron or Giron. Jerome? Thank you. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. I imagine it's not the first time, and it probably won't be the first time I mispronounce a name today.
What I wanted to know is I live directly across from, I live in Pacific Hacienda, and I'm directly across from this whole monstrosity. And what I was wondering is, as far as the construction and everything, what time I would like to have it in writing. I'd like to know what time are the trucks going to be out there in the morning, and what time is the delivery people going to be out there in the morning on weekdays and weekends?
Okay.
That's one question. And, you know, how do I get that answered?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so is somebody going to, are they going to look into it and get back to me?
I don't know that it's going to be necessary. I'm assuming that it's the elements in the ordinance, unless there's something special
What is that?
for
What
this
time is it?
project. So Mr. Survey can answer that.
Sure. And we can answer questions like this. I mean, you know, there's different individuals. In terms of construction, perhaps the concern is that during the construction process that there would be some impacts to the folks living over at the Pacific Hacienda project.
Got it, yeah.
So perhaps later, maybe we can just listen to everybody's questions and then go through and if you like, Mr. Chairman, I could help to figure out who the right person would be, or you could, and we'll just send the right person up to answer all those questions at the end.
Okay. Would you mind taking note of those questions for me?
That would be
Thanks.
fine. Sure.
All right.
Okay, so they're going to be answering them kind of with the other
Sure.
questions and everything? Okay, so, and the other question is, there's some people that are handicapped that are in the Pacific Hacienda. There's the Pacific Hacienda, there's the underground parking there, and then there is the street, and then there's the big parking lot right now, right. There's Wells Fargo, there's a big parking lot, and then there's the street, and then right across there, there's a underground parking for the commercial and Pacific Hacienda residents. Some of these people are elderly and handicapped. So how are they park in the parking lot? Now there's not going to be a parking lot. There's all this other stuff going on, and then there's going to be valet parking. So how are they going to get to maybe Wells Fargo and the other places there if they're handicapped? What provisions are being made for them?
Okay.
So that's another question. And let me see if I have anything else. How come they didn't put this to a vote to the citizens of San Carlos? I think it would have been a lot more fair. So everybody is involved and everybody can make a decision on this. It just seems like there's just, it's not really being done in a fair manner where everybody can, vote on it. Be a lot more fair.
Okay.
So basically, let's see what else. And the underground parking I had mentioned, is there going to be any blockage? I was talking to Mr. Rubens about that. Evidently, he states that there's not going to be any, because a lot of us park there during the weekends to, we unload our groceries and take them upstairs and everything. And we were just wondering if there's going to be any blockage with construction during this construction period.
I don't know what you mean by that. What do you mean by blockage?
Well, when they're doing the construction, are they going to have any trucks going in and out of there so we can't go into the underground parking there?
Pacific Hacienda?
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Right. Pacific Hacienda has underground
Right.
parking, commercial in that area. And a lot of us, it's very, especially the handicapped and the elderly, to be able to park there and just go up the elevator to
Right.
bring in their groceries and everything. And we don't want to have that blocked, and we're very concerned about that. So we need some answers on that too.
Okay.
And let me see if there's anything else here. Okay, I guess that's it.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm going to mispronounce this name mostly because I don't think I can read the handwriting. I'm going to say Chris Weatherman? Yes? I'm guessing not.
Difficult name, really bad handwriting, I acknowledge.
All right.
Chris Wuthman. I'm
Not too bad.
Yeah, thank you.
right.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm a San Carlos resident. I also work in real estate development. And I would like to say that like I'm sure many people, think this is a very lovely plan. The developer has hired an outstanding architect and excellent consultants. I would like to speak briefly to three concerns with respect to the public parking garage in ways in which it might be able to work better, which is, of course, critical to the project working, and maybe points that the Planning Commission could weigh in on. First of all, with respect to the entrance to the public parking garage, it appears to me that the outcoming cars will not be able to see pedestrians until they get right to the sidewalk. In other words, no line of sight seems to have been designed in to the exiting of the parking garage. If I read this correctly, I think that could be a concern. That could be a great safety problem. And if there are that many excess parking spaces created above what's there now, it may be possible to do some design work to create better visibility coming out and better safety on the sidewalk. That's number one. Number two, looked through the plans. I could not find the elevator, the public parking garage's elevator between its first level and its level above. Its dedicated elevator as opposed to the two elevators for the condominiums. It looks like the public parking garage may have to share the condominium residence elevator. That would be a problem. That would present a security concern for the condominium residents, and it may, if this is the way it is set up, create problems for the condominium plan that's involved in creating the condominium. Finally, third and last point, very mundane, but I couldn't, the lower underground garage will require mechanical exhausting, venting of the vehicle exhaust. I could not find where the vehicle exhaust would be vented out, and people who live adjacent to underground garages and venting are interested in knowing where exhaust comes out, and that should be indicated if it's not indicated. I was also concerned that the utility rooms down there, I have a question as to whether they have enough room to provide for the electrical room, which typically down there, the telecom room, the hot water boiler, and the exhaust fan. Perhaps it does, but it's a question in my mind from my experience and mistakes that I've made. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Tom Davids. And I know I said that right.
Thank you very much, and I just want to acknowledge I think the project is right on target. I think it's exactly what we've been looking for all these many, many years, and it's great to see it move forward. But a good project can be a great project if we attend to a few more details, and my concern is primarily, again, the garage. I'm pleased to hear that we have an equal level from the garage to the alley to the plaza. I think that's very important so that when you're looking through the plaza into the garage, you're seeing not steps, not stairs, not ramps, but you're seeing a clear plane. So that part's good. What we do about that face, though, is of some concern. I believe it ought to be as open as possible. Screening is so-so, but I would suggest you look at it as you're looking at it now. You're looking into the level parking. There's no obstruction. People move out, they move in, they transition. The building floats above it, and it becomes a common plane area. So there are no screens. There's no special walkways. There's nothing to impede people from moving back and forth as they do now. And I think if that can be done, the pedestrian environment here will be greatly improved and enhanced. So hopefully that can be worked into the plan. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understand. So when you say no screening, you would be looking into they're basically, I'm being slightly facetious, but like you'd have 4 pillars and then it'd be basically open and you would just see all the cars, and that's sort of what you were contemplating?
Yes, as you see it now, so that one level or one area passes into the other without any impediments. There are obviously columns, but screening it or blocking it and forcing everyone to a walkway, I think, is a mistake. I think they should be able to walk into the alley, into the plaza, into the Labu, into the Wells Fargo, without coming to a common area of transition.
And why do you think that's superior? To me, just intuitively, I think that you're going to have more car pedestrian.
Well, but the alley is going to be very, very seldom used during the day. It's basically an area for service. There'd be an accommodation for Wells Fargo to get the cars at that level, but at that point, the system or the alley is going to be a infrequently used opportunity as necessary. So, as it is now, you can move back and forth. My request would be, when the project is finished, you can move back and forth. You're watching for traffic now. You'll be watching for traffic then, but it does allow everyone to move at will.
Okay.
Can I ask one question? Tom, is that just on the alley side, or do you think that should be done on the street side also?
Well, the street, in Walnut Street?
Yeah.
As I understand it, Walnut Street has a driveway where you move into the alley, into the garage, and you move out. I think that's the way it should be. When people get out of their cars, they're heading into the downtown area, they're walking to their stores. That's, I think, when you would like that freedom of movement. And it's as though there's really nothing there and a building's floating above it, and it's not a separate building. You're entering to the garage. It becomes a common plane of access, if that makes sense.
Yes. You wouldn't have a problem with screening the second floor, though.
I'm sorry?
You wouldn't have a problem with screening the second floor of the garage.
No. Second floor is fine. I'm just concerned about that first floor. What I don't like to think about seeing is looking out into that new building and considering it to be a separate place. You got to go to, you got to go to a certain area to get in. Before it was level, we had ramps, we had steps. That's not good, in my judgment. And this allows, without any impediment other than necessary columns, the same kind of movement that we have now.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next speaker I have is Matt Heist.
Thanks for this. A little late to the process, but was wondering in a development like this, procedurally, are schools and the impact on schools looked at throughout the, and has that already happened? And so absorbing.
I can answer that later.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's, I guess, my number one, concern is just with 109 multiple family units coming in and having 3 kids in the public school system and loving it, but also knowing we're already a little strained on resources. Thinking of families moving in is great, but at the same time, very concerned that we're going to now have great new tax revenue coming in that we have to shovel immediately, quickly to our schools to make sure that we're not getting overwhelmed. And so I can tell you just from a parent's perspective, a major concern in light of the fact that whether it's White Oaks or Central or TL or any of these schools, it's already a little tight. And thinking that we have this many new families coming in, again, welcome everyone, but at the same time, we do have to think of that resource. And I don't know if that's part of an EIR or where that comes in, but that's my concern. So where would I read up about that, or where would I have found?
I can answer you in a second if you're otherwise done. I don't want to use up your time, that's all. So the answer to that is that there's a fee that the developer pays to the schools, and that's basically under state law how it works. They get the fee. And I think the amount was on one of the slides. I don't remember exactly how much it was.
640,000.
And then, of course, the way our schools are funded is through property tax revenues, and there are going to be additional property tax revenues from this development as well. I'm not suggesting that it will meet the cost of the additional students. I don't know one way or another, but I mean that's just how state law works. It provides for the developer to pay fees to the school district, and then there's the property tax increment. So the next speaker is Patricia Marsters.
Because the general plan will generate so much traffic, the city has called for traffic demand management for all public funded developments to be trips to be reduced by 20%. And I would like you guys to consider that the monitoring plan is inadequate. Whether it's common practice or not, they say it's common practice, but the total trips for condominiums is from a book, and the monitoring that they propose is for once a year, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, for a week, I think. And even though Holly Street traffic, the traffic is at peak level all day, and as we just heard, the peak level, the peak traffic time at the parking lot there now is at lunchtime. So I would like you to perhaps require that the total daily trips be actually measured, all day long to find out the actual number of daily trips generated by the new building. And then you can compare that to the book number for condominiums.
And then you can also calculate the difference between the expected daily trips and the actual to get an actual number for the reduction. So the point is that the general plan is expected to produce so much traffic that it's going to overwhelm certain intersections, especially at the end of Holly. And so we're requiring this 20% traffic demand management. You have to achieve it. You can't just wait for 5 years and look and say, oh, wow, it didn't work. So I really like you to compare that. Also, I've been talking to, or writing to Ms. Costa Sanders about the below market rate. And so the city did ask for in lieu fees. I can understand they want the fees instead of the units so that they can go and build more units at a lower affordability range. But the city code asks for, the city code asks for the developer to ask for the option of doing in lieu fees as long as they provide an analysis of the economic and feasibility of building the units, and that hasn't been shown. And I'd really like for you guys to show the infeasibility. I'd like to see a breakdown of actually how that works.
Thank you. So my next speaker is Mr. David Crabb.
Honorable Chair and members of the Planning Commission.
Good evening.
I'm here tonight representing the Sierra Club Sustainable Land Use Committee. We are generally in favor of the project, but we cannot endorse it per se at this point because it does not meet all of our criteria. But we do like the unbundled parking, and we do like the pedestrian alleyway treatment. But we do have a couple of kind of big issues here, for us anyway. At the very beginning of this presentation by Al, he talked about how great a location this was for transit-oriented development and close to downtown and so on. We have a big transportation demand management aspect to this project, supposed to reduce the cars by 20%. And yet, we're asking for 192 cars parked in the residential area, which is far above, the city only requires 175 in this standard code. And if you figure the 20% reduction on TDM, you only need 138. So I look at this, I say, this is a project that's designed for automobiles, not for transit-oriented, if you've got 192 cars in there. So I'd like to see them revisit that and see if they can reduce the number of cars in some manner or other. One thing they have in there is a bunch of tandem parking spaces. I think there's 17 of them that are actually the tandem part of the parking. They could eliminate those. They're always a pain in the butt anyway. And that would reduce the bid a little bit. They're talking about shared parking. They have 10 spaces for shared parking with the retail space plus and the residential. It would seem like there's a possibility of increasing that shared parking to pick up not only the retail for this project, but potentially the retail for some of the other buildings along Laurel Street, which would then open up some of the more parking to the public people, because right now, as I understand it, certain part of our current parking area is set aside for the local merchants. So I think between those two, we maybe could reduce the parking ratio a bit. Second thing I have is that the affordable housing component, I thought they required 17 units, maybe 16. I heard that earlier. And the in lieu fee, I think if they're doing the Cherry Street project, which I think is pretty much going to have to be a podium type project with structured parking underneath, maybe underground, any new units are probably going to cost about $300,000 a piece to build. My calculation gives you 12 units if you do it that way as opposed to 17. So I'd like to see how the city is justifying this cost that this fee that they're getting in terms of the balance of how many units they would have gotten if they were built into the project versus the number of units that I think they're actually going to get with this extra money. Other items are just kind of questions. I think they didn't mention anything about solar panels on the roof or anything equivalent. I wonder if they might want to consider that as an opportunity to do something there, save some energy. The bike parking, we appreciate the bike parking they've got into the project. It is lower than what we would like to see in terms of the units. We like to have bike parking for one bike per unit. And they're at, I think, 25 per unit, something like that. So we'd like to see the bike parking for the individual units increased. We'd like to see something equivalent to permeable paving that was not mentioned, and maybe it's considered in the project, and we can have the project people tell us about that. And we talk about this this high albedo paving, which means highly reflective, which then means it reduces your heat island effect in an area. So if some of the paving has that aspect to it, and possibly the alley does, I don't know. Let's see what else we got here. Electric charging stations. We appreciate they're including electric charging stations. I'd like to know how many. We like to have, I can't remember what our ratio is now. Bonnie, is it 5%? I think it's 5%, something like that. And let's see, anything else here? I think that pretty well covers it. A big thing is, I think it's terribly overparked. All our research that we've seen, and there have been studies about transit-oriented development, 1.5 or less per unit. This is 1.77, I think, per unit. And also the affordable housing question. Thank you.
Thank you. So the last speaker slip that I have is for Jeanette Wheeler. Okay. All right. Fantastic. So I have no more speaker slips. Was there anyone who wanted to speak but hadn't provided have not provided a speaker slip? All right. Then, in light of that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, so it is now time to deliberate. I think we should start with Scott.
Okay. How much of my stuff do you want me to go through before we move on to somebody else?
How much stuff do you have, Scott?
I don't know. 4 to 6 pages.
4 to 6 pages. Well, let's see how much we can get through.
Okay. Do we want to answer the questions of the audience first?
Sure. Can you help me with that, Mr. Savay?
I've written most
Certainly.
of those down.
So let's start with the first speaker. I think that John McMorrow, the developer, can talk about construction impacts during and parking. Will there be parking how will handicap parking be handled on Walnut Street, and will people still be able to access Wells Fargo and things like that? And then would there be any blockage of the Pacific Hacienda parking area during construction? Perhaps, John, you could try that.
So Walnut will be open throughout construction. So there's no time during construction that trucks will prohibit any access to Pacific Haciendas. I think that was the concern there. And then as far as handicap parking, so I think actually that's going to be better. I'm not sure there actually is handicap parking in Wheeler Plaza, surface parking now, but I haven't really looked. But it's pretty steep. But so somebody will be able to, go to Foodville. There'll be somebody, they can park there at Foodville and then access Laurel just like they normally would.
Well, I think that the concern is, and I mean, I'm just assuming I understand the concern, but that there are some individuals who live in Pacific Hacienda who are low mobility, and even if they don't have a handicap spot, that they have a larger parking area to choose from so that they can park closer to where they want to be. So I think the concern is that if, they want to access a business that is on the far end of Wheeler Plaza, they would have to park at the area where the valet was, and they would have to walk significantly farther or ambulate farther than they would normally have to otherwise. I'm assuming that's
I think
the
that's a
concern.
very good point. I think there's handicap parking on Laurel, but really we should check. But I think that's where the handicap parking spaces are currently. But certainly the valet parking location now would be able to accommodate anybody who needs assistance like that. But we can certainly look at and make sure that we do accommodate people with needs like that.
I mean, do you think as part of the valet program, I mean, I really don't know how significant the need is, you might be able to have someone available to, I don't know how exactly it would work. I'm thinking a golf cart, which seems totally unrealistic, but, able to transport someone who's limited mobility from the valet area, somewhere farther down Laurel if necessary.
I don't see why they couldn't be dropped off or park their own, somebody could meet them there and take the car from them. It can be worked out so it is very easy for them to get to the shopping that they want to get to.
All right. So
Whereas I thought her question was more about getting from Pacific Hacienda to the businesses downtown, and not for the handicapped individuals.
Okay, so
who live,
if that's the case,
yes,
during construction, they would have to go down either Cherry or San Carlos. That's all the sidewalks are handicap accessible.
and so all of those sidewalks will remain open.
Yes. So, but not you can't. She wouldn't be able to cut through Wheeler Plaza
Right.
parking right now.
Right.
No, just for the.
I'm sorry. It's totally natural for her to want to explain what her issue, and it's just hard when you're not at the podium. So during construction, there wouldn't be a way to cut through Wheeler Plaza.
Would there be a way for them to get through after construction?
When the project is complete, yes.
Project is complete. There's access.
It's actually
through
safer because our garage, one of the limitations on the design of the garage is 2% cross slope. The current surface parking lot is steeper than that. So it's a better situation for somebody who is in a wheelchair or needs assistance, the garage design.
Okay. But is there a path through
there are two paths.
There are two paths through where they're not in traffic.
Well, there's the pedestrian alley.
Right.
And then there is a secondary access point into the garage, but there's plenty of handicap parking in the garage. You can see all along the retail. Those are all handicap spaces where you are not required to go into the drive aisles.
Okay.
I think that was it.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I appreciate it's difficult. If you want to come up to the podium, you can come up to the podium, but we can't have folks talking from the gallery.
Okay. So did we answer her other two questions about construction times, delivery times, and then she had a question about why this didn't go to the citizens of San Carlos?
Okay. You want to try those other ones about delivery? No, that's during construction, I assume. There were questions about deliveries during construction and
I'm sorry, if you can, I'm going to also say the same thing to
Might as
you.
well
People
stand
who,
up here.
everyone who wants to speak has to, come up to the podium.
So there won't be any activity other than approved construction hours by the city.
Which the question she asked was when, and that's 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and I think it's 9 to 5 on Saturdays and
If I could just
Sundays.
clarify, in the EIR, we specified the construction hours limited from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday, Sunday.
Okay. And then I think the delivery times, she may have been talking about post-construction. When will trucks show up at 4 in the morning and start unloading for the retail businesses?
We don't have retail businesses selected, so that's going to change, but we've designed the building so most of our activity is on the alley side, including trash pickup, which is a vast improvement over the current. So we think that's going to be the case. So it'll be on the back side.
But I think that question with regard to delivery times in the alleyway is something that the Planning Commission could talk about this evening. I mean, I think it's relevant. One of the things that we have been interested in for a long time is to limit the hours to certain hours. And we've done it with other businesses in the community. And we just say, hey, look, you can deliver from, 7 to, or whatever time you want in the morning, 7 to noon. And then you can't after that. And so those, retail businesses would have to abide by that. And that way, that's where you get into that area of using that alley space as a multi-purpose space. And also for pedestrian crossing and activity, people coming in and out of the parking garage.
Can I just add that this alley will basically be a public way, and the city council would be able to regulate any kind of parking and loading, unloading zones and things of that nature at that place.
So would staff have a recommendation at this point for the time frame for that? Is it 6 to 8? Is it 7 to 9? Is it longer than that?
What we've heard from businesses, and perhaps Lisa Porras can jump in if she thinks that there's any further clarification. But what we've heard is, for instance, the businesses like to get deliveries before they open because if they need to restock their retail goods. So I would say a 7 a.m. time would be reasonable. And then sometimes midday, they will need to receive things for lunch or the dinner crowd. So I think, maybe something from 7 to noon would be acceptable.
Okay. So are there any other questions, Mr. Survey, that were posed by the community that haven't been answered yet?
Yes, a good number of them.
Okay.
Let's start with Mr. Wuthman. There were some questions about the parking garage line of sight, and does it have enough visibility? Is the visibility okay? And I think we have Gary Black in the audience, and perhaps Gary or Jessica Music can answer that. Parking garage, parking garage elevation.
It was elevators.
Elevator usage, yeah. Where is the elevator? Is there an elevator from the second floor to the first floor? Is it shared or not? Ventilation and where is the exhaust coming out of the garage, and would it be an impact to the local community there? And then the utility room area, where is it? And so maybe Gary and Jessica could try that. Yeah.
Sure, I can start.
Okay.
Hi, Gary. If you wanted to chime in first, that's fine as well. I can help answer some of these questions, too.
Gary Black with Hexagon Transportation Consultants. On the visibility for the garage exit, it's a typical arrangement in an urban setting to have the edge of the building right up against the back of the sidewalk. And typically we see warning buzzers and signs. So unfortunately that's what you have to live with, but that's the typical design when you have that situation that alerts pedestrians that there's a car that's about to exit.
I think warning buzzers would be kind of a
difficult thing for the residents to put up with. Could you do it with lights or some other, electronics or whatever?
Well, you typically have flashing lights, but that wouldn't be acceptable to somebody who was blind, for example. They wouldn't be able to see the flashing lights. Mr. Wuthman did suggest maybe widening up the entrance there so that the sidewalk would be visible for cars when they exit, which is a design option if you didn't want to have these more active warning devices.
Have we considered lights inside the garage? Like coming out of the Redwood City Theater, when you come up right up onto the sidewalk, there's a warning inside the garage for people walking. Is that something to be considered? Is that possible?
It would eliminate a space.
Would it be? I mean, at least be beneficial to the people driving to know that someone's coming. But
Typically, the warnings are for the pedestrians. The cars are coming. That's very easy technology. I'm not personally aware of a technology that would be the other way around and warn of pedestrians coming.
I think it's just
I would have to look at that particular garage to see how it works.
I'm not sure if it's technology as much as a reminder. When you're leaving the theater, I mean, there is something there. It's like a big flashing red light, and you stop and go, oh, yes, there's pedestrians walking across here. I need to be careful where you might be distracted otherwise. So I don't know if that's something we'd want to consider or not, but it's an idea.
Can we take a look at that area on the map so that we can look at the face of that, where that exit is, and whether there's the ability to
I think you had it up on the screen.
change screens?
And I would also emphasize that the condition is actually very similar to as it exists today. I mean, there's parallel parking on the street. It's a more narrow street, so cars are going to naturally be driving slower. Even before coming to tonight's meeting, we ate off of Laurel Street. We parked our car in the current Wheeler Plaza site. Exiting that parking lot, you have to be cautious, even as it exists today, even as an open parking lot. You have to be cautious as you pull up to that back of that sidewalk, and you have to be cautious even as you pull out onto the curb with the parallel cars there. Your line of sight isn't great as it exists today. So I think that there's conditions that exist and will continue to exist that will cause patrons using the garage to be cautious. They're being cautious now, and they'll be cautious when the project is built.
In addition to things like lights, flashing lights, and maybe mirrors or whatever we need to do on the outside of the building to alert pedestrians and things like that. And the commission can put conditions on the plan development permit. Okay.
So then parking elevators.
Yes. So right now, actually, and I'll toggle back to the plan. So right now, all of our accessible parking stalls are located at the ground level. And you can see them kind of along the arcade. There's a safe route in front of those stalls that take you to 2 access points, actually, that will lead you to the arcade. So there is no elevator that takes or connects the ground level to that second level of parking. Patrons using the second level of parking will use convenient stairs that are located kind of throughout the garage to access the arcade, or to access Walnut, or to even access the alleyway.
So that was a design decision not to have an elevator to the second floor?
It was a client decision, yes, and a design decision.
Is there a reason for that other than cost?
I could allow the client to speak to that, but yes, costs are impact.
Okay. And where are the exhaust fans located?
So exhaust for the subterranean level garage will actually be in shafts that go up through the building. We're working with the mechanical engineer to locate all of those utilities throughout the project and those shafts, but they will be carved into the units and go all the way up to the roof.
I want to make sure I understood clearly what was said. So there's no way, there's not an elevator from the units down to parking?
No, that is
okay, I'm glad
that
I
is
asked
incorrect.
the question because I wanted to make sure I was clear.
So at the subterranean level, there are elevators that will take you all the way up to the residential units above the parking structure and the retail. So residents do have access to their level of parking.
Okay, thank you.
It's just there's no elevator between the first and second floor of commercial parking.
For commercial parking. Okay, thank you.
And that actually was more of a design constraint. Elevators have a 4-foot override for all the equipment, so they go up and down. Well, 4 feet in a building like this, you go up into somebody's up home up above it because there's housing up above on the third level. So we designed the garage with all of the accessibility on the ground level.
Yeah, look, I'm not an expert, but I have family members who don't have a disabled parking placard, but also are not capable of easily accessing stairs. So basically, you are eliminating access to the entire second floor of the parking garage for people like that, and that causes me some pretty significant concern. So, I guess I don't know, I may need to understand better your rationale other than, you're losing whatever it is, a 5x5 area on the third floor. I think I need to understand that better because otherwise I would be pretty concerned about that.
Okay. We looked at the number of spaces on the ground level, and we felt like based on the demand, that the number of spaces on the ground level that don't need to go downstairs would be sufficient. If somebody does have a need like that they can park on the ground level, or if they park on the second level, it's a short flight of stairs. But your concern is, I understand what you're saying.
Okay. And so I'm sorry, with the exhaust fans, the answer was that the exhaust from the garage is going to go out through the roof. Okay.
And really, once we get into working drawings, that's when we do all the design for gas, utilities, things like that.
And so the answer is the utility areas, those are TBT. Okay. All right.
So how many sets of steps go down from the second floor to the first floor?
There are 3.
3, okay. I just wanted to make sure I saw them.
Okay. Moving to Tom David's question or issue with regard to the openness of the parking area along the alley. What we're going to do is bring the elevation of the alley up so we can talk about that. So if you would give us just one moment. Yeah, that's it. Go back. Yeah. I think I can start the discussion about this. So on the bottom there of your screen, you can see that this is the alleyway. So this is looking at the building as if you were in the service alley. And the idea, as noted earlier in our presentation, the vision of this would be to create a space that was usable to the public. Now, we have talked to people that are interested in the openness that you might find somewhere like Hillsdale Mall, or even just the idea that Wheeler has been an open-air surface parking area. And so those arched areas that you see in the middle that are a little bit darker in color are actually architectural screening, and they're supposed to have an artistic appearance to them. And then up a little higher, there's openings to allow more light and air to go in to the parking garage. Then there's an opening. Can I have that? I'm going to try and use the mouse. There you go. Can you see? It doesn't really help, does it? Does it show up on the screen?
It does.
Oh, okay, you can see that. Good. So there's the one of the key exit entrance points to the garage right there. And so these are the areas that I'm speaking of here. And so there's been, a lot of discussion. We've talked a lot with the architect. We've thought a lot about it. We've talked to individuals in the community who, initially wanted to see an open area here. But one of the issues is, it's sort of a trade-off. It's, is it more of a retail space? Is it more of a parking? It becomes more utility. Like, if you see all the cars, there may be a greater sense of security or safety or more light and air. But so the intent of these areas here was to open it for that light and air component, but still maintain sort of the privacy and the separation of the vehicles and the people. If you were ever to use that alley for a public purpose, for dining or events or hot harvest nights or something like that. So actually, there is a local property owner, Jerry Ernst, who owns some properties right across the alley, and we had very in-depth discussions about this. He actually had an architect prepare some renderings about what it would look like as an open area. And he asked that those be taken to the Economic Development Advisory Commission for their read on it. So we did that. We took those drawings to EDAC, and EDAC felt that from an economic development perspective and the idea that the alley could be used for, the retailers, for restaurants, and it could actually be sort of almost like a dual frontage if it's done well and done nicely, that if you saw the cars, it would really bring the aesthetic down. So this was sort of the compromise is to provide the light and air into the garage with this design as opposed to opening the whole thing up. So that's the reason that we landed on this design. EDAC recommended against doing it that way, that's where we are today.
Have these materials been chosen yet for the screening materials? Do we know what that's going to be? Are we there yet? I mean, is it like semi-transparent or to allow light in, or is it solid, or?
Yeah, no, it's not solid. It'll act more like a metal railing.
Metal?
Rail.
Okay.
A metal rail.
I actually like the screens and like the idea of throwing my pen at a public meeting, and I like the idea of being able to use the back alley for open air. Though I have to say, one more walkway from the garage I wouldn't dislike that, I guess. And so, how much does that mess things up by me suggesting that?
I guess the way we thought about it, and you can kind of see, well, not so much in the key map, but we thought that those connection points or those walkways should have a purpose, that they should take you someplace. So, of course, we've put a lot of emphasis on the arcade that runs behind the retail and trying to provide multiple routes from that garage parking to that arcade to cross in a very safe spot and connect out to Laurel and also to the future plaza space. That makes a lot of sense. And then the other location was something that we've worked a lot on with city and the community, and that's the location that you see kind of on the key map, mid-block along the garage, that there is a small little connection point, secondary connection point, where a person could walk across the alleyway and basically connect to the street that leads to Laurel along the Wells Fargo. So we're trying to make those connection points in areas that make sense for getting to Laurel and in kind of safe spots.
But you only have one entrance, one exit over the entire back of that building. It just looks to me like
There's more than one, actually. There's one here, right?
And then also the arcade.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you do that again,
Show
Al?
that again. There's one.
Here,
Here. Okay.
here, here. So there's one here, here, and here. So there's three. Is that correct, Jessica?
Well, that stair that you were pointing at beside the arcade, it brings you down, but then you'll connect over to the arcade. So it's really two. It's the arcade
it's
where your
two,
mouse
okay.
is hovering, yeah, and then it's mid-block along the garage.
Yeah.
So the arcade and then the one over by Wells Fargo.
Right.
There's two.
Is there any way to put an additional one in there somewhere?
I guess we struggle with where it would go and why we would be putting it in there.
Well, essentially, all the businesses in between are now going to require people to walk all the way down to one entrance or the other in order to get to their businesses. Okay? And so that just makes it much more difficult for somebody to do that. You've essentially put a roadblock in front of them as a way to get to the business. So what I would suggest is opening up one of these screens somewhere in between.
If I could ask a question, though, I mean, let's say you put one here, you'd still have to walk this direction or that direction to get to the openings to go to Laurel. So you're still in the same boat, sort of. Once you get into the alley, you're stuck because these are all buildings, and the only way to get to Laurel Street is through the Laurel Plaza here or through Wells Fargo. So that's the other, that was one of the key points I think that we looked at as, so you end up in the same position you're in, as opposed to walking through here and going through here. And if there's vehicles coming down here, you have people kind of walking down, it's less safe. If you unload here, as opposed to going to a direct route where you have like a crosswalk-like setting here or here.
I guess I was thinking about the back entrances of those businesses, not necessarily going to the frontage of Laurel, was kind of what was going through my mind as to why you would add a separate exit. But I follow your reasoning, Al, on the safety side for pedestrians.
The other thing that you have to consider about this is that you've got a 50-foot tall building here, and you've got a 28-foot wide alleyway. So whenever you close that off, it's going to be shaded. It's not really ever going to get sun during the day at any point unless it's very early in the morning and the sun is shining down this alleyway. It's going to be pretty much in the shade all day long. So I'm not sure how useful that is going to be for businesses to have dining out there. But it may be.
All right, so I think that.
Well, we have a couple of other ones if you.
Yeah, I think that we're now moving into the Sierra Club questions. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know that we need a response to the wanting fewer parking spaces. That's either we think that's a good idea or a bad idea. The question was how many units will the yet undeveloped and undesigned Cherry Street below market rate housing idea. Do we have an anticipated number of units for that?
Yeah, what we did is we took a look at the size of the lots in that over there where that HIP housing piece was, and perhaps we could now switch back to a site plan or something. But as I showed on an earlier site plan on Cherry Street, you have the HIP housing building, and that's just one building. What we anticipate doing is actually acquiring additional property to make the lot bigger. And I know that Mr. Crabb is an expert in affordable housing. I know that he does affordable housing design. There you go. And so one of the things that we're looking at is that may not have been anticipated by Mr. Crabb was there we go, is that we're looking at acquiring additional property in this area here. And that would allow us to expand the footprint of the building, and there would be also some space. There's some space left over. Gosh, this thing.
You got a sticky finger there, Mr. Survey.
I'll forget that for a moment. But there's some space behind the Cherry Street area there too that the city could use. It's sort of an extra space behind the parking garage. So we figure about a 10 to 13,000 square foot footprint as opposed to 5,000 or 8,000 square foot footprint. So that may have been the idea that David was using a smaller footprint to come up with his numbers. And so yes, it would require, maybe underground parking and maybe 3 or 4 levels of affordable housing above. We figured 1,000 feet per unit. So that's where we came up with our numbers.
And what is the number that you anticipate?
We anticipate 30 units in that location. Hopefully we'll get more. And I'd be happy to sit down with Mr. Crabb and get some advice about how to do that.
Okay. And then I think the rest of the questions that
Before you
Mr.
leave the BMR, can I ask a couple questions about that? So is the property at...
recognizing, of course, the city council's already decided that it's going to be an in lieu of fee.
I understand that, but it's important, I think, to understand whether it makes sense for it to be an in lieu fee or not.
I don't know. The city council's already decided it's going to be an in lieu of fee. So
Yeah, but
I'm
they-
not sure we can't overrule the city council. So,
No,
go ahead and
understand
ask
that.
your questions, but just with that in mind.
If they've already decided everything, then that makes what we do irrelevant.
I think they've decided the in lieu of fee issue, but you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. I still think it's important for us to bring these items up. Especially since the city council purchased the property, the city council is also going to be approving the project. And so, we are the check in the system as far as, at least making a recommendation to them about whether we think what they're doing is right or wrong.
Go ahead and ask your questions.
657 Walnut, is that a below market rate housing?
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay. So there's 17 units or 16 units out of Wheeler Plaza?
I'm sorry, could you
Below
restate
market
that?
rate. So the below market rate housing that would be required for Wheeler Plaza would be 16 units, plus the 6 units that would need to be replaced here makes 22, and the 6 units from the HIP housing would make 28. So the in lieu fee is only gaining us 2 extra units. Am I right?
I guess that's one way to look at it, but there's nothing in the BMR ordinance that says you have to replace the units that you're taking out. And this building here is a dilapidated building. It's probably at the end of its useful life. We've started to relocate some of those people out. So if a developer wouldn't necessarily be required to replace those units. They would just have to conform to the BMR ordinance, which requires 15%, which would be the 16 units. So the way you are looking at it is adding these 6 units. 6 units? Those 6 units to the mix. So that's one way to look at it, but it's not the way the BMR program is implemented.
Okay. So when something is a BMR unit, wasn't it supposed to be a BMR unit for a certain length of time?
I'm not sure about that. Maybe Lisa can answer that or Greg, but I'm not sure.
I thought once something became a BMR unit, it was a 30, 40, or 50 year length of time for a BMR unit.
maybe we could have that question answered in a minute or so.
Maybe actually, I think that this conversation could get kind of wide-ranging and more policy-oriented. So I'm thinking maybe let's finish up the discussion of the Sierra Club issues, and then as we go through the various issues that you have, we can address it in that time. So if I could have the architect come up just for a moment, because I think that you're going to be able to answer most of the other questions that were raised by the Sierra Club. One of them was with respect to the bike parking. What was the analysis that was done in providing the number of spaces that are provided, and would it be feasible to add more? And if not, would it be a bad idea?
Yeah, so our strategy was to meet the city's requirements for bike parking for both the short-term and the long-term goals. So that's what we've done, and we've located them in various spots in the garage. So short-term bike parking is provided at the ground level, and that's provided for both public and residential. And then long-term bike parking for the residential is provided down in the subterranean level. And those quantities are trying to satisfy the required quantities set forth by the city. So that's how we came up with those numbers.
Okay. Would it be feasible to add bike parking?
To add additional
Yes.
bike parking? Potentially.
Okay.
Potentially. There's always things that we're trying to put into the parking garage as the project develops, utilities and things that we mentioned before. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but there's potential.
Okay.
But we have provided the bike parking, but the homeowners association will be responsible for that garage, and if they decide at some point that they need more bike parking or less, they can easily add it.
Okay.
So it's flexible.
I had a question as far as the homeowners association. There was a statement in here about the TDM, there being a TDM contact and as part of the residents, and I was wondering what exactly that person would do.
I think that person is a coordinator. Well, the homeowner association hires a management company.
Right.
And so that person at the management company is the TDM. And what they do is they make sure that all the residents are aware of the public transit opportunities available. And so to make sure that people know the Caltrain station, the bus schedules, it's really to help the residents better utilize the existing great transit system that we have here.
Is there any structure to that, like things written into the CCN or the bylaws? Or I mean, we don't have to go down that far. But I just wondered what that person did, and if it's the management association, management company, then I assume that they'll have something that they give to new residents.
There is something that outlines what the TDM person is supposed to do. I've seen that. I couldn't quote you exactly what it is, but it's along those lines.
Okay.
I think the Sierra Club also asked about electric charging stations. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun, but since you're here, do you know how many you have planned?
We have 3 electric charging stations in the public garage and 3 in the basement.
3 and 3. Thank you.
Okay, and then there was a question about whether you were using permeable paving.
We actually don't have a lot of surface paving. We're not anticipating that in the alley. We're designing the alley to the city standards.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have permeable paving.
And then I guess in the same vein, there was a question about reflective paving.
I'm not sure what that is, but we don't have any of it.
Okay. And then there was the comment from the Sierra Club about the fact that you are exceeding the number of spaces in the residential area that is required by city code. And
Right.
Can you comment on why you're doing that?
Yeah, David and I just disagree on this. I've built a lot of projects. 1.5 spaces per unit leads to parking problems down the road for the neighborhood. This is where we really disagree, is that I don't mind people owning cars. That's fine to own a car. I just don't want them to use them. The Sierra Club doesn't want people to own cars. So in California, you just need a car to get to Yosemite, to get to Tahoe. People like to have a car. But where this project is located, it's transit-oriented. They don't need to use the car. It will collect dust. But if we don't have enough spaces in the basement to house those cars, we're going to create a problem for the neighborhood. So we really only have one shot to get the basement right. And in our experience, we need more than 1.5. We need close to the 1.7. So it's a safeguard. You don't want to design something that's going to be a problem down the road.
John, a quick question on that. Is there an opportunity down the road, since the parking is unbundled, if you find yourself with 23, for example, excess parking spaces, could those turn into shared parking for the businesses on a rotating basis, so that at a certain time, say for a certain length of time, you could say for the next year the businesses could use this, then if the residents, the apartment or whatever is sold or something, then that parking could revert back to the development, and that would give some flexibility and some excess parking in the parking garage above for public parking.
Right. So I think, again, the homeowners association, once it's established, once the building's occupied and the use of that garage is established, that's when that conversation happens. If there's extra space down there, I don't see why the homeowners association wouldn't be open to that. But we can't commit at this time to there being open spaces down there. I just don't know. But it would make sense what you're saying.
How would that conversation start? Is it between city staff and the homeowners association?
I think that would be appropriate when the project is completed and occupied.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I do have one question. And David Crabb, forgive me if I'm misquoting you, but I thought you said there were 17 tandem parking spots. Can you point out where those tandem parking spots are? I'm not sure my eyes are seeing them correctly.
Slide. They're yeah, they're in the basement, not the retail, but
I do. I'm looking right at it.
Along the Walnut Edge. Keep going to the left, located behind the utility room and the long-term residential bike parking.
I see them. Thank you. That was a visual trick. Thank you.
I believe that was it, unless you have something else.
On solar?
yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So the solar kind of goes along with the utilities. We really haven't designed the utilities. There may be some opportunity for solar, but we haven't gotten there yet. But we will, if there are opportunities for that that make sense up on the roof, we'll certainly look at that. But we haven't designed anything yet.
One of the other things that came in front of us where they actually were thinking of using solar for the hot water, and that was actually a better, more efficient use of it than solar panels. Are you going to just evaluate all those types of options?
Correct.
Okay.
Why wouldn't they work?
Why? It's a matter of space. It's surprising we don't. They may well work.
I mean, is there any possible reason why they wouldn't work?
Well, there's other equipment up on the roof. There's space. Sometimes it's not practical.
And actually, Cal Green does require that 15% of our roof surface area be solar ready. So there will be a portion of our roof that is solar ready if down the road it makes sense for the project.
But it may be incorporated. I can't tell you today, yeah, we're planning on solar or we're not planning on solar. We just haven't done it.
Sure. Okay.
It will be Cal Green compliant, though. I mean, that's part of.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I think that ended the Sierra Club questions, and I think that ended all of the public questions, didn't it? Or were there more that I missed?
There was a couple, maybe with regard to Ms. Marster's questions with regard to the TDM plan adequacy or inadequacy.
Okay.
The one suggestion was made to measure the total daily trips once the project was built to get a more accurate number about how many trips was this actually generating for the TDM plan, and whether that would be feasible or not. And then there was a question about the economic and feasibility of the BMR units in including those, but I think we've sort of covered that in our other discussions. But perhaps somebody, maybe Gary or John, can talk about the TDM plan and whether it makes sense to add, something in to it with regard to getting a more accurate number. It's already there. Okay. Well, apparently it's already there.
What page are you looking at, Al?
On page 16 of the Transportation Demand Management Plan in your packet. I'm not sure what attachment number it is. Let's see.
7.
Okay, good. So on page 16, at the third paragraph down, a 5-year review will be conducted to evaluate the overall effectiveness. And I mean, that could include, I suppose that could include total daily trips. And then it does, actually in the paragraph above, it does talk about hiring an independent consultant to obtain traffic count data and to document the results in the monitoring report. So the coordinator that you discussed earlier would do that, will work with an independent consultant to obtain the traffic count data. So it appears to already be in the plan.
I think one of the things Patty mentioned, I hope I'm not restating this incorrectly, is that the busiest time for Wheeler is around lunchtime and that their hours don't seem to line up with that. And would it be appropriate then to have a consultant look at lunchtime hours as far as TDM is concerned? Or is that not appropriate?
That goes more to the parking garage, and that's it would be a city garage. And I think this is more to the residential units of the project, and maybe they're 10,000 square feet of retail, but not kind of what's happening in the downtown. Because I mean, yes, we know that those are the peak periods, and in our parking garage is going to be toward full at that time.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. So I think that took care of the responding to the public questions. So I think you're on, Scott.
Okay. So going back to the below market rate, because I don't think we finished there. According to the zoning ordinance, a detailed analysis of the below market rate concept needs to be done. And it's ordinance 18.16.070. Is that something that we can get a hold of?
I'm sorry, Scott, could you please restate that question?
So if you look in the zoning ordinance, at section 18.16.70, a detailed analysis needs to be made of the feasibility of putting the BMR units in the project.
Yes.
Has that been done?
Yes.
And is there some reason that we didn't get a hold of that in our packet?
Well, again, it's feasible to put the units in there. You could do it. I think it's financially feasible. But here's, going back to what we were talking about before, the city saw a very unique opportunity. So while it's feasible to put those units in there, and the other thing is that the levels of affordability that the developer would be putting in, I think, according to the plan, are in the mid-range of affordability. And maybe Lisa can help explain how that works, of the 16 units. But what the city saw is a unique opportunity to create a space for more units, leverage funding, maybe federal funding, and partner with a housing group that the city's already partner with and has talked to, and maybe others as well that are interested in creating an affordable housing project in the city of San Carlos, and to create deeper levels of affordability than you would get in the Wheeler Plaza development with more units. It would be great if we got more than 30 units, but it gives the city a lot more flexibility and, again, a very unique opportunity to leverage the property that's there next door, leverage that partnership, leverage federal dollars and other dollars. So that's the reason that the city has gone, is going this direction at this time. But I think that early on, we knew that there was some feasibility to put units in the project.
So let me just state this. My concern is that we don't own that other piece of property. And what's going to happen is we're going to get the $3.7 million, and it's going to go into a fund. And the longer we wait, the less that's worth, because certainly the prices of the properties is going up much faster than the interest that money is going to earn sitting in an account. And my other concern is that piece of property belongs to somebody, and whether the city is negotiating with that individual for that property, and whether they're sort of pushing that individual to sell that property, and whether the city could take that property through eminent domain.
State law allows cities to take properties by eminent domain for affordable housing purposes, or for parks, or for parking. So the state grants cities the authority to use eminent domain in a number of different circumstances, but that may or may not be the practice that the city uses to purchase the property.
Have we used eminent domain in the last couple of years?
No.
No. Okay. I'll move on then. Page 6 in the report here. I guess one of the questions I have about the project is the fourth floor along Walnut Street. And I'm just kind of curious, I know the fifth floor is set back, but why isn't the fourth floor set back?
Jessica?
Sure. So really we felt we got a pretty big impact and relief along the San Carlos elevation by setting that fifth level back and expressing the roof lines at the fourth floor. Proportionally, having kind of that base expressed down at the bottom and then seeing the two levels of units above and then stepping back feels aesthetically like the right thing to do. There's also so much relief with the balconies and then coming along to Walnut, the breaks in the courtyards, that we felt like that the step back at the upper level along San Carlos was enough to give the relief to that facade.
So how tall is that top of the fourth floor that people will see?
The eave line?
Yes.
So from the finished grade to the eave line standing at the corner of Walnut and San Carlos is about 40 feet to the fourth floor. Okay. Going up to the fifth level, the uppermost level, we're about 50 feet, 50'7", I think, to the top of the plate, basically the eave line.
So
and then there's, go ahead.
Where is the 53-foot piece of the project?
I'm not sure where that 53-foot number is coming from. I think in the staff report it mentioned something like 54'3", and that's to the top of the ridge of the mansard roof of the fifth level.
Okay, so that's not the top of the wall for the fifth floor. That's the top of the ridge scaled back. Okay,
correct.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Another question I have is there's an exemption for no loading spaces, and I just have a real question about that. We don't even know what's going in the commercial, Yet we've already decided not to put any loading spaces in there. Is that because we expect all of the loading to be in the alley?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. That 10,000 square feet, we anticipate that being divided up into smaller pieces, like 2,000 square foot retail spaces. And that size of retail space, that loading sometimes is front loaded, or that loading could occur in the alley. And we feel like it wouldn't impact the parking or the circulation flow. But a actual designated loading spot within the project starts to have more of an impact.
But if we limit the delivery times to 7 a.m. to noon, does that change the requirement for a loading space?
I don't think so. You can see the angled parking stalls located in front of the retail space, and we anticipate some of that being used for delivery on those early morning deliveries. The small truck that pulls up, and then also there's space in the alleyway.
Okay. The next item that I have is the stop signs at the corner of Cherry and Walnut.
The stop signs at the corner of Cherry and Walnut.
It was a unanimous recommendation of the Planning Commission to ask for additional stop signs on Cherry Street. And I haven't seen anywhere in here anything about that mentioned.
John, or Lisa, do you guys want to?
It's in there. It's the last traffic 8 mitigation measure in the mitigation monitoring plan. Convert the intersection to all-way stop control. I just see that it just says Laurel Street, so we should probably add Cherry Street because that's the intent. It's on the mitigation monitoring plan.
You're talking about Laurel Street and Cherry Street. I'm talking about Walnut and Cherry.
Oh, that didn't come out as a required mitigation measure.
No, but it was a unanimous recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Okay, I'll have to look back on those minutes.
Yeah.
It wasn't required as part of the EIR.
It was a recommendation from the Planning Commission.
I'll need to look at the action of the City Council.
The EIR. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And in fact, what I found on page 9,
City Attorney believes that was added as an improvement measure for the city in the city's program, traffic improvement program, and not as a mitigation measure to this project. Right, it's not tagged to the project, it's a city function that would be implemented by the city, the Walnut Street.
The planning, as you may recall, sitting through the EIR meetings, staff was making a distinction between mitigations required by the impacts of the project and improvement measures that we were requesting of the developer to voluntarily provide. And this is my recollection, is that the EIR and the did not point to a significant impact at that intersection, but nonetheless, the Planning Commission and the City Council believed that that was important enough to require as an improvement measure. So that's why I think it may not be appearing in the mitigation monitoring plan, but it's still a requirement of the project.
Are there other things like that?
There were other improvements, but I can't remember all of them, but that one.
The crosswalk.
Mr. Rubin, I think Mr. Marsters is volunteering to eliminate 4 or 5 of his pages if you just tell him all the other things that, so you might want to take him up on it.
Is that something that we can get sort of as, like I asked for the feasibility study in the future, if there are additional things that are tied to it, it doesn't have to be part of the project, but just a piece of paper that tells us that these are additional things.
As I recall, they were listed as an attachment to the one of the resolutions at that time as improvement measures.
It would just be helpful to have that reminder 3 or 4 years later. Okay. There have been several questions about the need for a second exit out of the parking garage.
A third exit?
A vehicle exit. Okay. And I've read the both of the traffic consultants have said that it only requires one exit, and they give you all the numbers and everything and explain why it's not necessary. But there are times when there are huge numbers of people going in and out of that, will be going in and out of that. For example, hot harvest nights. How do we deal with those types of, shall we say, traffic jams?
I think that would be a hexagon question.
Yeah.
Well, typically, if it's a special event, and I'm not familiar with the hot harvest event about what, exactly what kind of traffic control occurs, but if you have a case where you need to, for example, empty a parking lot quickly, you can have traffic control just at the driveway to help the cars get out faster. But this size of garage, if I may state the typical design that we deal with, would not warrant having that many driveways. There's other issues with driveways that are negative, and it would, to have a driveway sitting there 24/7 that you would really only need, occasionally, I would submit would not be the best design.
I also had the question about walking us through why there's only one entry exit point for the public garage. And I imagine there's obviously a trade-off for pedestrian safety as well. But our hot harvest nights aren't all that occasional. They're every Thursday for many, 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 many months. So it's a good question, Scott.
Except that with hot harvest nights, it's not like that everybody's leaving at once and everybody's coming at once. I mean, it's a long event, and since we've already talked about the garage for the movie theater in Redwood City, it's got one entrance and exit. It's got to be like at least twice the size of this garage. I don't know, twice. It's huge.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
And that walkway is probably busy anyway, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
And it's not just, the other thing that I worry about is the lunch crowd. That parking lot is full at lunch, and those are people who come in between 11:30 and noon and leave between 1 and 1:30. So there's another rush on a daily basis for these types of
Well,
things.
actually, let's take this out of the abstract. If we've got one driveway and we got 50 cars that want to get out of that driveway in a 5 to 10 minute period, how much of a mess is that?
Well, it depends how much traffic is on the street for that they would have to wait in order to exit. But to put some numbers to it, just kind of an industry standard rule of thumb is that one single driveway can accommodate 500 cars an hour. And 500 cars an hour you would expect to see on a parking garage that had about 1,000 parking spaces. So this parking garage has 250 parking spaces for the public part, approximately. So it's substantially less than we would say is the upper limit of what you could service with a single driveway. And we thought that because of the trade-offs, the negatives with multiple driveways, as Commissioner pointed out about the interface with pedestrians, loss of the continuity of the urban design, if you will, landscaping and that sort of thing. When you put everything into the mix, in our professional opinion, the best design is the single driveway for the public parking.
I guess you've probably designed more than one garage before.
Yeah.
So based on your numbers, you're getting just under 10 cars per minute exiting the parking garage.
You mean 500 cars an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
I'm just not sure how reasonable that number is dealing with that location. But I don't have
It's
any
half the
data.
size, so you only have to do with 5 cars a minute.
Well,
Is that better?
or I was thinking 250 cars in half an hour.
And quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, we were concerned about that too. So we hired a second traffic parking engineer to peer review Gary's numbers and whether, we hired one of the top parking garage firms in California to look at our parking garage, and they confirmed what Gary is saying. So we were skeptical as well, but the experts are all telling us that Gary's numbers are correct.
Okay.
You might have gotten lucky this time, Gary.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So under the mitigations, it talks about posting the contact information on the project, and one of the things I'd like to ask is that we post, because of the size of this project, that we post the contact information on all 4 sides, and rather than just have one location where that contact information is, that we actually have it in such a way that anybody coming at it from any side will be able to get that contact information. A lot of these I think we've talked about. So you talked about the parking plan for during construction. What happens if Samtrans needs either or both of the space that they have for their own project, the Transit Village? How do we handle the parking in that case?
Likely they will need some of that right away for the transit village on a short-term basis. So that area, there's a long right-of-way that goes all the way down to, I believe it's Arroyo. So it'd be a little less convenient, but we would have to slide down. But there's tons of right-of-way there.
I'm done
Come
for
on.
the moment.
Okay.
Just to bounce off, Scott, your question about the improvement measure for Cherry. I know it's codified that we had brought it up several times in the final EIR from 2011. I brought it with me, but I don't see it as a list anywhere. So if that does exist, I'd like to see that too. Thank you.
Ms. Bergman.
Yeah, I have a question about diagram A2.1. What I'm trying to figure out is what's visible on Laurel Street. I don't know if this is what's facing Laurel Street, or I'd like to understand. I mean, I really like what we've done with Walnut and San Carlos Avenue, but I'm just not quite getting what's visible walking down Laurel, because it's almost like you've shifted the whole. It feels like what's happened is you shifted the focus from Laurel and San Carlos Avenue one street up, and I really don't want to see that shift happen. I'd like to have more than one street be attractive, but I want to make sure that what's going on Laurel is just as aesthetically pleasing as what's going on in the rest of it.
So what do you mean, like if someone is on the east side of Laurel and they're looking towards this development, what are they going to see? Or because I assume that if they're walking on the west side of Laurel, they're not going to see it at all.
So
because there's
maybe
buildings.
I'm not oriented right. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, will we not see anything?
So the west side of Laurel, I mean, there's buildings in between you and the project, so you can't see anything from the west side of Laurel. So I guess the question is from if you're
On the east side, you can't, we've done a cross-section, you can't see anything. The buildings even if you're 6'2" like me, if you're on the east side, the height of the two-story buildings on the west side is such that you don't see the top of our roof.
Then what's A2.1?
But A2, that's as if there were no buildings on Laurel, but you will see the portion of the building that's behind Laurel, the future Laurel Plaza. Of course, because there's no building there. And you'll also see this building at the driveway where currently Wells Fargo, there's a driveway there. So you'll see that portion of the building in the background.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't creating just a long row of, similarly. Okay, so this really isn't visible. Okay, all right. Yeah, that was my major concern. Okay, thank you.
Good question. Mr. Gutierrez, you have anything?
I've got nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Nothing. All right.
It's super clear to me right now.
What do you got for us?
I got a few more.
Just because I jumped in on Scott
Wait, you already have.
doesn't mean I don't have my own
Wait a
time.
second. I don't know how you generated a few more from that question and nothing, but okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see how that develops.
Let Angela go.
Just a couple of quick follow-ups, because I do believe we've answered most of the questions. And this question actually goes out to Alex. I know that you had mentioned earlier, David, that somebody had reached out to you asking to delay the meeting. And I know that, Al, you walked us through the public outreach. I also remember at least the earlier renderings being available at Hot August Nights a couple years ago. Am I misremembering that, or did that actually occur?
Yeah, we've been showing those plans at Hot Harvest Nights since 2011. Okay. Yeah, so we've always brought them out there and shown them to the public.
I also had a neighbor express to me that they were surprised to hear it was 5 stories. And then looking through my own plans, I hadn't seen it substantially change at all as far as what we had initially planned and what we had initially anticipated through the EIR. So I guess my question is just bluntly, has the height of this changed significantly, or am I just not seeing something? Okay. So the mass, the scale, the height, everything is exactly what has been distributed publicly since 2011, what we've seen at Hot Harvest Nights. This is not Reno. And and what we approved through the EIR. Thank you. Those are my only additional questions at this point.
I actually have one more, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Regarding the commercial elevator again, I believe you mentioned that you'd have to take out a unit to make it go any further. I mean, is it only one unit that would be affected?
Yes, potentially just one unit.
Okay, thank you.
And only 4 feet of that unit.
That's what I said, and I'm not an engineer, so let's not quote me on that. And I think I said 5 by 5, but I'm still not an engineer. So Scott, you said you had exactly 3 more things?
I do.
Okay.
Exactly 3 more things. Just wanted to check with Lisa, the length of time when a BMR unit comes up, how long has that become a BMR unit for?
I think we need to maybe clarify the units that we're speaking of.
Yeah.
So the development at 657 Walnut Street is not a BMR project. It was acquired from redevelopment housing set-aside funds.
That's what I was.
And it was utilized as an affordable housing rental project, but it's not a BMR project. Okay. Similarly, Cherry Street was acquired with the assistance of some affordable housing set-aside funds, and there's some other federal funds that went into that. That's not a below market rate designated project. It is affordable. And so I don't know the length of term for below market rate units are restricted. I don't have the ordinance memorized. Lisa, if you know that.
30 or 40
30
years. Okay.
Right. But these 2 projects that you referenced earlier are separate from that.
That's what I was expecting you to say. Thank you. The other, the next one is the other 2 projects. at times I've seen them connected to this, like Foodville, the Foodville site, and the building that's going to go there, and the park. And in this rendition of this project, it's not part of the project at all. So how do we know that this project is actually going to go forward?
Well, we know we need this for parking in the interim during construction, so that, we knew that would delay construction of a project here. And then we talked to the city council about, did they want to, ask the developer to do this, or did they want to go back out to the marketplace and find a developer to partner with to do it that way? And the council is of the mind to do it that way in the future. After we don't need it for parking, probably before we close up the parking lot, we would go out and ask for qualifications from qualified developers, and then the council would select somebody to do the development and the plaza.
So there's no guarantee at this point that that park is going to be there or that the building isn't going to get bigger?
Well, there's a commitment from the council. The council really wants to see this project. We've also been talking to some developers just to see what's the feasibility, what's kind of the sweet spot of the project. And there's a lot of interest right now in the market, and they understand that public plaza component would go with it. So we're doing that research now, but there's definitely a very strong commitment at the council. I've heard them say it at multiple meetings.
And so that's the one project, assuming we have the same council down the road when we have that. And the second one is the affordable housing, and that's not connected because we don't own that property yet.
Right. We don't own that property yet, but again, we're trying to acquire the property, and we have a commitment from HIP Housing, at least, that they're interested in partnering with the city. So they really want to do some kind of a project and joint partnership with the city of San Carlos, and we've actually talked to other housing groups, and I know there's a tremendous amount of interest in doing something there.
Okay. And my last question is, we all got this letter from Lester Girdlestone on the dais. Is there anything in here that staff wishes to comment on?
It was here.
Or maybe I do have it and it's underneath
somewhere.
I don't think so, unless there's anything that you'd like us to comment on. We do have a copy of the letter here.
Okay. And it will be entered in
to the record.
To the record.
And passed on to the city council, yes, as part of the package that goes to them.
Okay.
Is that it, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, so it's now 9:38. We have done sort of our questioning part of our deliberation. It's looking like we are prepared to vote on this tonight. And I just want to see whether there's a general consensus that we're ready to vote on this tonight. Yeah?
I feel ready.
Yeah.
I have something I'd like to see explored, and I don't know if we have to make it a formal condition, but I'd really like to see if there is a way to do any kind of pressure sensors or something around that parking that would notify the drivers coming out.
Yeah, so I kind of have a proposal about how I'd like to get to that, but first I just want to make sure that we're going to be ready to vote on something today. It seems like we are. So there are some things that I think I would like to see in the project. And I think there are some other things that other people would like to see. So how I'd like to proceed, I think, is I'm going to go through the things that I think I would like to see. I want to see if there's sort of a basic consensus as to whether or not those are things that other people want to see. And then if so, I want to give staff and the developer one last chance to tell me or tell us why it's a really bad idea before we include that as part of the vote. So if that's agreeable, I think I'm going to proceed. So the first thing that I would like to see is I would like to see an elevator for the commercial portion of the park, the public portion of the parking that allows you to get from the first floor to the second floor. Am I the only one who thinks that is important?
I agree that that's important.
Does anyone else think that that's important?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you brought up a good point. So
Okay, so I will be asking the developer and staff in a second to convince me that it's a really bad idea if they feel that way. There was discussion about the exhaust fans and knowing where they're going to exhaust to, and the statement was that they're going to go to the roof. That seems like a good idea, and I would like to see that actually be required rather than sort of a general idea. So is there general consensus that since that's what they're generally planning on doing anyway, that we would make that a requirement? If feasible, I should say a requirement if feasible. If it ultimately is not feasible, then a change would be possible.
If it doesn't go to the roof, where is it going to go?
Well, I think it could go out the side. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's got to go out the roof.
Okay, well, good. Then we're good.
Go out the roof.
All right.
Well, I have a comment on that. I mean,
Okay.
are we engineers, are we willing to make that statement? Or
Well,
do
that's
we
why I
want-
would
do we
include the
want-
feasible part.
Okay.
So if it's not feasible, then they don't have to do it.
I mean, if an engineer comes up with a, I don't really want to open that can of worms. All right, feasible's fine.
Okay. I would like the developer to consider, in consultation with staff, if feasible, permeable or reflective paving in areas where there's going to be paving.
I agree with that.
Do I have another person? Okay. I would like the developer, in consultation with staff, if feasible, to do what the Transit Village folks did, which was provide the infrastructure for more charging stations, so that if in the future there's more demand for charging, it'll be easier to put them in. Is there a agreement with that?
Yep.
yes.
Okay.
Excellent point.
I would like to require the developer, if feasible, in consultation with staff, to consider actually installing solar rather than waiting to see whether or not the homeowners association wants to pay for it, because that seems frankly unlikely to me. Does anyone? Do I have a general consensus or?
The consensus with the emphasis on if feasible.
If feasible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I gotta be honest with you. I mean, are we tying their hands by saying they have to have solar on the roof, or are there better alternatives that they could be exploring? Like I said, like
I want, well, so
Solar water.
that's a good point. I mean, I would like to see solar on the roof unless it's not feasible. I mean, that's my view. I think it's good for the environment. It's relatively cheap now. They're going to have 15%, I think was the statement, on the roof anyway. We're not talking about, well, anyway, people have a chance. So those are the things that I would like to see. Oh, and then also the adding the 7 a.m. to noon delivery time after the development is complete, and just to have some discussion with staff to try and address the issue of folks who may not be handicapped but have mobility issues getting around during the construction period. And I'm just assuming that folks are going to be in agreement with that. So those are things that I want. Does anyone want to add anything to this list?
Yeah.
I just didn't know if we had kind of settled whether we're comfortable with the width of the garage or what else needs to be done to enhance the pedestrian safety. I'm sorry, the garage opening.
Let's
Do you want to
unless you
table
have a
that?
proposal,
Right.
a specific
Fair point.
proposal, let's table that just for a second.
Okay.
So does anyone have an actual proposal for a change?
I propose that they investigate motion sensors and see if it's. I don't know if it seems to me that there's got to be technology that's not that. If it's not cost prohibitive, that they explored using some kind of motion sensor technology that alerts the people coming out of the parking lot that they're pedestrians. It seems to me like that should be possible. If not, that's fine, but we should explore it.
Yeah. No, there's got to be some way of notifying the pedestrians that a vehicle is
Oh, no,
coming.
and they said there is.
There is.
They said there is, and that's actually,
Yeah,
so
so-
there is that. But what What I think that Ms. Bergman is indicating is the flip
Oh,
is
in
whether there's a
addition.
way to notify putting pressure sensors in the sidewalk that would tell a driver that there's a pedestrian on the sidewalk. And I believe that the response was, and I think it was from the expert, was that there was no such technology. But we can certainly ask them to explore whether perhaps the expert is wrong.
But I don't want to lose the fact that I think that there needs to be a way of notifying the pedestrians that a car is coming.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll add that
So
to.
we can, that's a definite, and if we can go the reverse, that would be great too.
Okay. Okay. Do you have?
Motion sensors inside the garage, letting the pedestrians know that there's something. There's motion sensors out on the sidewalk, letting the drivers know. So
Got it.
Like as there's a pad for as the car pulls up, there's a sign to the pedestrian that a car is coming.
Got it. So, anything else, Ms. Bergman?
no, that's fine. Thank
Mr. Gutierrez, do you have anything? Do you have a proposal?
I have.
I probably would share in Scott's, what I am sure Scott's proposal is one additional pedestrian entry and exit to the garage.
I would like to see an additional pedestrian entrance exit to break up that huge wall between the walkway and the one entrance that's way down at the other end.
Okay.
I think.
I don't, but you've got 2 votes. Does anyone else? No, you've got 2 votes.
No, I'm either way. I'm not gonna like not.
Well, you're gonna.
You're gonna have to because you're the deciding
so
vote.
you're either a yes or a no on that.
No.
Okay.
All right.
Next.
I'd like to make sure that we post contact info on all 4 sides of the project.
Contact info. I'm sorry. I
There's
contact info.
an individual who deals with all the complaints, the noise complaints, the dust, all of that. That
This is
contact
during
info
construction?
during construction.
Okay.
And usually, on a lot of projects, it's in one location. Because of the size of this project, I'd like to see it on all 4 sides.
I'm not even going to poll because I think that we're going to have agreement on that.
And then
Anything else?
The last one is just a statement about sort of looking for that opportunity for excess parking to be taken advantage of by the city. So at the completion of the project, there should be an evaluation done of parking, and city staff should work with the newly formed HOA to see if excess parking can be utilized by the city somehow.
I have absolutely no problem with a advisory request that staff work with the HOA on that issue, if that's the request.
That's the request.
Okay.
I have one more additional. Actually, he reminded me. I actually think 5 years is too long to wait for evaluations of parking. I'd like to see some kind of analysis done when the units get 90% full to see how we are with meeting the TDM.
Oh, I think that's ongoing. It's
Yeah,
there's an annual-
there's an evaluation every year,
Oh, okay. I thought I said 5. Okay, good.
but there is a 5-year evaluation also.
Anything else, Scott?
No.
So, Angela, there was the issue that you tabled that you wanted to have some more discussion of.
Widening the garage opening. Now, if the technology does exist for both ways to be seen, I'm just not sure if it does. And so my question is, if the technology doesn't exist, or if after looking at it, they don't find a way that cars can see pedestrians on their way out, do we want to slightly widen the entryway to the garage so that cars can see pedestrians? You know what I'm saying? Like a curb cut, like a curve on that respect on either side of the driveway opening.
Could we install a stop sign there?
Why do you like stop signs so much? I'm going to install like 3 stop signs like right in front of your house.
I really suggest that look at the Redwood City Theater parking and how they exit there, because they have a way of doing that.
I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about because I park there quite a bit. I don't love it. It's not going to kill me. It's not a deal breaker, but I don't love it. And because I come in and out of there quite a bit, and there is a mirror, so I'm able to look at the mirror and see if I see a pedestrian.
So
the sounds occur. I'm just wondering.
So do you want to just ask staff to explore with the developer the feasibility and advisability of widening the driveway?
Good enough, yes.
Okay.
Can we get Gates to come down and a train to go by?
You know what, Scott? Anything for you. Anything. Okay. So I think that we've got our wish list, and now I want to give staff and developer an opportunity to explain to us why we are so wrong about some of these things.
If I could maybe just clarify some of the wording of the conditions, and then Al and the developer may have some other comments. On the exhaust fan, I would say through the roof to the satisfaction of the building official. We need somebody to make that determination.
Yep.
I'm concerned about the permeable paving because I do not believe that's a city specification right now, and that would be going in the city right away. So that would need to be to the satisfaction of the city engineer.
Okay.
And then do you need to specify infrastructure for additional charging stations, how many you want?
Okay.
We have 3 at the public parking and 3 at the basement right now. And then the delivery time limit, are you just speaking of the commercial tenants that are part of this project to limit their delivery hours?
Yes.
This does not limit the delivery hours at Les Boulangers.
Correct.
Thank you. Investigate the motion warning sensors to the satisfaction of the city engineer. The other concern about that is the city will be taking on the maintenance responsibility of the public parking structure. And so I want to make sure that's something the city is very comfortable managing, maintaining on the long-term basis. And it could be that the visibility is addressed in a design fashion of widening or angling so that there's better visibility rather
That
than
one is very, it's just a request. So it's not actually, that one's not going to.
Investigate.
That is not going to be a requirement.
Okay.
So on
And
the,
then I wanted to clarify the opportunity for the excess parking. The city will be a member of the Property Owners Association. So there's going to be a Property Owners Association, that's the commercial owners, the city, and then the Homeowners Association. So we will have that opportunity for that dialogue
Again, that
through
one's
that
just going
process.
to be an explorer
Okay. Al, do you have
situation.
anything?
Just 2 items, I guess. On the number 1 was the elevator in the garage. It's just a trade-off. It's, is the trade-off for the loss of the spaces worth the accessibility? It's really just a question. I would like to know,
What do
I'm
you
just
think the answer to
curious.
that is?
Well, I know the answer to the question, so
Oh, do you?
I really don't have an issue with it. I'm just bringing it up as an issue. So I think I know what the commission's answer is on
Well,
that.
I know. I'm actually interested in what your answer is.
Oh, what my answer is? There's maintenance. It will be a city elevator. In talking, we've had this parking garage gone over with a fine-tooth comb by Gary Black's firm in Watry, who was our peer consultant. And we talked about the elevator issue, and it's just your inclination to want to have an elevator go up to the second floor. Just is. Me too. But they suggested that it would work, it would function just fine the way it's designed. Okay? So it's really is it something that we just want to have as a community? It's something it's a bell that we need to have. So I'm sort of on the fence about it myself. I think there's a cost issue for the city, maybe safety. And the other thing to consider is you are losing parking. So where's the trade-off there? I mean, you could be losing 4 parking spaces, I figure, maybe. And I guess I would have to ask the architect how many, or Gary, how many you'd be losing there. So I really don't have a strong opinion either
I
way.
struggle with it too. I mean,
Yeah.
I take the stairs. I park in a 5-story garage. I take the stairs. I like to take the stairs. But we've got an aging population.
Yeah.
And I know it's anecdotal, but I have a relative who can't do a flight of stairs, and they don't have it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I have aging relatives too who only can get around in a wheelchair. So how do you get them down? I guess you could go down the ramp.
Well, they hopefully will have a placard, and they'll be able to park on the first floor. So,
Is there some way to put and I see them at the, I think at train stations, they have these little platform elevators. So it's not like a full-fledged elevator. It's got sort of the gate around it, but it would go up and down one flight, and it wouldn't take up, 4 parking spaces to do this. It would take up 1 on each level rather. And so is there some way to look at a much simpler elevator system and not sort of your full-fledged, door closing elevator?
And I'd like to hear from the architect and developer about some of these issues that have been brought up.
Well, and maybe we can solve this at least. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of kicking the can down the road, but maybe we can just require the developer to do it if the city wants it. And that'll...
You mean like put it in afterwards?
No. I mean, we can require that the developer put it in as part of the project based on approval and provide another decision point for the city. I mean, if the city wants to reconsider it and not require it, it certainly can.
You could make that suggestion to the city council. I mean, that's an option, is to just say, well, the commission, was perhaps you were on the fence, as I am, that, you think it's something that should be studied. And, the trade-offs with that. I think of groceries, I think of, strollers and all the stuff you have too. So it's not strollers.
Oh, wait, I'm not on the fence anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not on the fence anymore. Forget it.
Right.
You
So
mentioned
there you go.
babies, and you had me at babies. All right.
Tip the scale.
You did.
Okay, I'm done. All
And
right.
so the other issue is the issue of the delivery time hours. And in just having a side discussion with Greg, we talked about, well, what would be the impact on the businesses that have established delivery hours? And so the concern was raised, and we thought about it, and maybe we should study it as opposed to require a certain delivery time, although I think the delivery time is very important for a number of different reasons. Usage of the alley, the pedestrian access of our parking garage, and the general aesthetic for the folks living above. Because if you've ever been in a hotel in a downtown place in a city somewhere and they're doing trash or doing whatever at 6 a.m, can you imagine that every day? It would be very difficult for those residents. So I think it's something that should be studied, and we should actually talk to the businesses along Laurel Street about how we can accommodate their needs and the needs of the city. So I think maybe as opposed to a hard condition, maybe it should be the city study and work with the property owners along Laurel to come up with some compromise.
But will you still be able to require it if we don't make it a condition of approval?
Yes, because the alley is going to be a public way, so the city will have jurisdiction to put any kind of parking restrictions, loading, unloading, delivery times.
But I actually assumed that the concern was more about deliveries coming and stopping on Walnut during that. I thought that was more of the concern that was raised by the residents.
Well, that is also subject to the purview of the city council too, the parking in the public right of way.
All right.
What about moving?
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. The waste management company is exempt from the noise, and so they can come at 5 o'clock in the morning and empty your dumpsters.
Well, that would be true regardless of our condition of approval. So.
Yes.
Condition, and I'm not sure you heard the clarifying question, is it's for these commercial businesses only you wanted to do the limit? And I think what you're talking about is study further a limit for the alleyway.
Yes.
Okay.
Where would moving trucks actually go? Would that be on Walnut? Would they be able to park on Walnut? I mean,
They'd probably be able to park in the residential garage down below.
Oh, you're kidding. I'm like, what?
I was just asking Mr. Survey to do something, so if we could just be patient for a minute. You can have an awkward silence. Those are my favorite kind.
And finally, just I wanted to share something about, it was noted that BFI comes at 5 and 6 in the morning to do their pickups and delivery, or pickups of the trash in that area.
Sir.
Okay. So I'm not sure where we ended up on some of those.
I could probably tell you.
Okay. But the ones that I just wanted to kind of clarify on the delivery times, I think the concern there is the deliveries on San Carlos and Walnut. So we're not restricting deliveries along the alleyway.
I think that at this point, the recommendation is going to be for the city to study it regardless, so I think you're okay.
Okay, fine. Where do we end up on the elevator?
I think that we're on an elevator.
Babies pushed us over the edge.
Babies.
Strollers.
Strollers.
Okay. Fine. On the elevator.
I was waiting to argue against babies.
I was like everyone. Like, God, you got to have an elevator. But I park in Redwood City too. Nobody uses that elevator. It's like, okay, it's nice to have there, but everyone takes the stairs. So I think it's going to be something. It's fine to ask for it. I'm okay with it. But just it sits there and doesn't get used. But
Is there a smaller version of the elevator? There's no
we can
that
look
goes
at
down
that.
and
Like, how about a two?
Yeah.
Well, no, I know what you mean. A platform raiser.
Like a Home Depot where it just sucks you up to the floor.
Right. We can certainly look at that. I'm not sure how feasible that is, but we can look at a smaller elevator. I don't even know if they go 10 feet. The one thing I just didn't want to get my hands tied on here is we really haven't designed any of our utilities. And we will have, this building will be comparable to a LEED certified building. That could include solar. It could include other things that we aren't even thinking of in the next 6 or 8 months when we do the design. So to say specifically that it has to have solar, solar does reduce the electricity use, but we could have other things that also reduce the electricity use. So we're going to get there. This will be a very energy efficient building, but it does tie our hands to say, okay, it has to be solar.
Well, here's my concern. It's like, so the solar doesn't benefit you as the developer. It costs you money, but it doesn't benefit you. So if we don't require, I guess we could say something like solar on 15% of the roof, or, an equivalent reduction in energy use, if that provides you a little bit more flexibility. But otherwise, I don't see where your incentive is to put in solar.
So we look at the homeowner's dues, and all of these energy features help reduce the dues that people have to pay to maintain the building, including solar. So we are incentivized to keep that cost low. So we really do look at the energy efficiency of a building. We'll spend the extra money to get high energy, high efficiency boilers, the major infrastructure. We spend the money. And because also it's a selling point when we go to sell the units. People like to know their building is energy efficient, it's contemporary. That's a big plus today. You would want that if you're buying a house.
I understand, but you chose silver certified. You could have chose platinum. I assume there's a reason why you chose silver, and it was economic, right? But anyway, I get the point. You don't want to have your hands tied to solar. I think that we can.
That's not going. Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. It's not going to end up making the building more energy efficient with that requirement.
That I don't understand. Why not?
Because we're already doing the building to LEED comparable standards. So we will have a very energy efficient building. If we put in, let's say, solar, then maybe something else doesn't need to be as efficient. It just is like dictating this is how we want to accomplish the energy efficiency, and I don't think that's serving the purpose.
I'm following you.
I didn't hear anything else. We can do the contacts.
Charging stations? Infrastructure for additional charging
Yeah, that's
stations?
fine. We
That's fine.
do need to know how many. I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry.
The infrastructure for the additional charging stations.
Oh,
How-
yeah.
How many?
It was the 5% number. How many units do we have?
109.
So I guess it would be three additional.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
And it's just the infrastructure. I mean, we're just asking that the infrastructure be there so that they can be installed, not that they need to be installed.
So with the transit village, they said they could put the infrastructure in relatively easily to do a lot more than the 3 or whatever.
I think it's scalable, so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing is on the exhaust. I think it's going through the roof. This is sort of getting back to the design. How did we word that? If there was a better solution?
It's going to be if feasible.
If feasible.
I got to be honest with you. If the city engineer thinks there's a better solution than venting it through the roof, I think they know more than we do whether or not it should be through the roof or somewhere else. I mean, we're not engineers. I'm concerned about
That's
locking
fine.
it into.
It would be if feasible and to the satisfaction of building engineers, which I think will give the building officials.
That's it for me.
Okay. So I think we're probably ready for a motion. The only thing that I think is has he convinced you not to want to require solar on the roof? I mean, I could see wording it 15% solar or equivalent reductions in energy
efficiency
footprint
or
and
something.
energy efficiency or
Right.
something like that. If that.
Can we leave it somehow to the satisfaction of staff so that they look at the energy efficiency and they go, yeah, the trade-offs that they're talking about make sense.
Yep. Yep. I would say, or
15% ubiquitous? Isn't it already assumed by the standards that they're trying to build to?
Well, they've got to set it up for 15%, but it doesn't. They don't actually have to put the solar in.
Okay, so they need to attain the 15% energy efficiency as compared to what?
well, no, I think it was the 15% was actually the amount of roof that was available for solar, not the amount of efficiency. But I think that the idea is we want the building to be more efficient, and that there's
do it
15%.
without
If they can
solar.
do it without solar, then great, and leave it to staff to work it out with them if solar is not the right way to do it. Okay. All right. So can I get the motions on the screen?
There's 2 slides.
Okay, so I think we would add our conditions to the motion on the second slide. Is that right? Okay, so let's do these one at a time, if that's okay. I will entertain the first motion.
I'm sorry. I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Carlos recommending the City Council adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the Wheeler Plaza development project.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, I will entertain the second motion.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Carlos recommending the City Council adopt an ordinance approving the San Carlos Wheeler Plaza Plan Development Plan and related zoning map amendment to rezone the site from mixed-use downtown core MUDC zoning district to Plan Development PD zoning district.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, I think that, although I don't usually do this, I think I'm going to go ahead and try and make the motion, and folks may need to correct some things. I move that the Planning Commission approve the design review, approve the tentative map, approve the grading and dirt hall certificate, approve the below market rate housing plan, and approve the transportation demand management plan with the following conditions. That the developer install an elevator in the public parking portion of the parking garage that goes from the first to the second floor, to the extent feasible and to the satisfaction of the city engineer and the city building officials. That the developer install its exhaust fans for the parking garage to exhaust to the roof to the extent feasible and to the satisfaction of city building officials and city engineers. To the developer consider, in consultation with the city, installing pedestrian and or car pressure sensors to the exit of the garage to the extent feasible and to the satisfaction of city building officials and or city engineers. That the developer post contact information to provide complaints and like comments to the developer during construction, installing those notices on all four sides of the building. That the city and the developer discuss, strike that the city staff discuss at the conclusion of the construction with the homeowners association and the
Business association, the property owners association.
Property owners association, the possibility of utilizing any excess parking that may exist in the residential parking lot to provide sharing. That the developer discuss with the city the feasibility of widening the entrance to the public parking area. That the developer consider permeable and or reflective paving in areas where paving is going to be provided to the extent feasible and in consultation and with the and to the satisfaction of the city building officials and or city engineers. That the that city staff, and this is not a condition of approval to the developer, but that city staff discuss and study putting limitations on deliveries to the commercial tenants of the development upon completion of the project. That the developer develop a plan to provide additional accessibility access to mobility impaired but not necessarily handicapped individuals during the period of construction related to the valet parking. And I think that's all I have.
You didn't do the charging stations?
Oh, thank you very much. And that the developer, in addition to the charging stations provided in the plan, install the infrastructure to allow for an additional 3 charging stations in the residential lot.
And the other one is the solar or energy efficiency.
Thank you. And that the developer either provide solar on the 15% of the roof that that will be available for solar, or provide an alternative method of increasing energy efficiency a like amount in consultation with city officials and to the extent feasible and to the satisfaction of city building officials and city engineers. Is that it? So is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Motion carries. I think this matter is concluded. Thank you. So moving on to item 6, report on recent city council actions.
Yes, we do have one update from the City Council meeting that occurred last evening. There was an introduction of an ordinance to amend the front yard setback for the MUDC and MUD zoning districts that the Planning Commission heard earlier in the month, and the Council unanimously adopted the Planning Commission's recommendation. Other than that, I don't have any other updates from the City Council meeting.
Any Planning Commission comments or reports?
I just have one real quick comment, and I just want to say thank you to the Director of Public Works for the decision to make the dirt haul permit not go down Holly Street.
Comment?
Yeah. Any other Planning Commission comments or reports? Any correspondence other than items already mentioned in the meeting?
Just a reminder to the Planning Commission that there will be a tour. You've been invited to a tour of the Black Mountain property this Thursday afternoon. And
is that invitation specific to us, or is this? I'm sure that I must have gotten it. And
yeah, it's specific to commissions and others in the community. And then there will be a broader community-wide visit of the property on Saturday, the 25th, from 9:30 to 12. So you could theoretically attend that one if you couldn't make the Thursday night. But the Thursday night one is specifically for commissioners and volunteers and people like that.
What time and where exactly at the property would we meet you?
Would you do us a favor, Al, and resend that email to us?
Yes, absolutely.
And include the information about
Yes.
the Saturday date?
Yeah.
Because I can't make the Thursday.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any additional planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects?
The next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting of April 20th is canceled. Following that, the next meeting will be on May 4th, and staff will be bringing forward the housing element for your formal recommendation to the City Council for adoption.
Is RDRC is still on for the 20th, or no?
It is.
It is? Okay.
Yes. And I believe we have a couple of other projects that may be coming forward to you on May 4th at this time. It's tentative, but there may be a project coming up soon for the Commission's consideration at 545 Walnut that may be on the May 4th agenda or May 18th. We may be bringing forward for your consideration a modification to the previously approved design plans for the Honda dealership off of Industrial. That may occur on the 4th as well. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you. If there is nothing further, the meeting is adjourned at 10:18.